morning, everybody. Thank you for being back in the room. I know some of you explored a little bit of Luxembourg last night. As with yesterday, maybe it will help if I walk over to this side. So I encourage people to come over to this side of the room where I can see a whole expanse of empty chairs. So anybody coming in from these doors, please fill the plentiful chairs over on this space, because we have a really great panel to start with this morning. It's going to be about food, bio, life sciences, something very close to my heart, and we really want you to be engaged in that conversation as well. So I would really encourage you to come over to the front seats, because the lights are strong, and if you're closer to us, we can see you if you want to ask questions, and I want to leave about 20 minutes for questions as well. So welcome back. Welcome to those of you joining online. I know there's a fair number of you. I asked for the statistics, and so welcome to you as well. It's going to be another packed day of dense conversations, and we want your energy to come and join us on stage as well. And this is, of course, the second day of the EIB Group Forum 2025. And we are going to wait, of course, for the President to arrive before I formally begin. But again, just to remind you, hopefully you've got the Wi-Fi code, and also I've seen some interaction yesterday on LinkedIn, on social media, whatever your favorite form of social media is. You can see the hashtag there. It's hashtag EIB Forum. Whilst we're waiting for the President to arrive, you will have noticed this key figure standing to my right. She's the boss, really. She's the one on the floor pulling all the strings. She and a fabulous organizational team. So perhaps before the President arrives, we could give them a round of applause, because they have worked incredibly hard. And I do hope the President will arrive quite soon. Otherwise, I'll have to kind of do a little Irish dance or a little bit of singing. Don't encourage me. You're giving me all sorts of ideas now. No. I won't do that. But I know that there is an Irish contingent here. I've spoken to some of them, and thank you, they're lovely to meet you. And we also have one on the upcoming panel as well. In fact, our first speaker today, unfortunately, can't join us live. It will be Antonio Costa, and he has sent us a video message. So I am hoping, before I have to prattle on about geopolitics or something else, that the President will arrive. Whilst we're waiting then, okay, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to ask for the lights to be brought up in the audience so that I can see faces. So these lights down, please. Sorry, technical team, another round of applause for them. Okay, we won't do that. Thank you for joining us, President. We can't start without you, that's for sure. So now we can formally begin. So it is, of course, the second day of the EIB Group Forum, and we're going to use this day to engage with our fabulous speakers, some really important topics of conversation, with the aim that something will change. And that all of you in the room, and you all have such strong backgrounds, and you all have the voice and the facility to make change. And that is hopefully what will happen after these three events, where we're going to discuss these crucial topics of our time. As I just mentioned, our first speaker today couldn't join us in person, unfortunately. He's the only speaker who couldn't join us in person. It's Antonio Costa, President of the European Council, but he did make a video, and he's going to share his insights on the current geopolitical situation in this short video.
Querida Nadia, muchas gracias por esta invitación. Dear ministers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your invitation to join you in Luxembourg. Unfortunately, today I need to stay in Brussels for a special European Council meeting to show our support to Ukraine and to deliver on European defense. We need to look at today's geopolitical changes as a great opportunity to build the Europe of defense, with new resources, new tools, and new investments. The EIB will be important in this. Your role has been crucial in the digital energy and climate transitions. And now you will have a critical role also to play for our security and defense. I would like to welcome the letter by Nadia Calvinho to European leaders. It is very important to further adapt the EIB's lending practices for more loans to the defense sector, for making Europe's peace and security a new transversal goal of the EIB public policies, ensuring that excluded activities are more precisely defined and as limited as possible in scope to align with the new policy priorities of the European Union. And of course, in the manner which safeguards the EIB's operations and financial position. I wish that this can be taken forward as quickly as possible by the EIB Board of Directors. As we build the Europe of defense, we must also push ahead with our competitiveness agenda and our strategic autonomy agenda, especially on energy and in critical technologies and infrastructures. In fact, we must think them in parallel and increasingly together. European defense, European shared prosperity, and European strategic autonomy. They are about Europe's strength. They are about our common future, about our security, quality of jobs, and new opportunities for our regions. They go hand in hand. We all know of our innovation gap, our productivity gap, our investment gap. So the EIB's latest investment report comes at the perfect time for making life easier for our entrepreneurs without giving up on the green and inclusive transition, for integrating our capital markets and mobilizing European savings for productive investments, and for making our single market more innovative. 2025 needs to be the year when we deliver for security, prosperity, and sustainability for the current and the next generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much there to President Costa for giving us a video despite the lack of his availability today. Now we're going to jump right into our first topic, which is frontier technologies. This includes food, biotech, and life sciences. As one of my panelists said to me just before, we can't eat AI, so even though it's very important, we really do need food. So we're going to talk about that. It's something where Europe really has been a player for so many, many centuries and can still maintain a foothold to be competitive globally. To set the scene, please welcome to the stage Kyriakos Kakouris, who is Vice President of the European Investment Bank.
Good morning to everyone. Madam Commissioner Zakharieva, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests. Good morning and welcome to the second day of the EIB Group Forum 2025. It is a great honor for me to kick off the panel of the today meeting and set up the stage on discussion on frontier technologies in the biotech, life science, and food sectors, topics that impact all of us daily. As the EIB Vice President of the European Investment Bank, as somebody who eats even here in Luxembourg, coming from Cyprus, I'm delighted to share with you some insights and perspectives on the current challenges and opportunities we face in these critical industries and introduce the discussion. Europe has long been a leader in biotechnology, life science, and the food industry, boosting a strong technological and production base, and we have a lot to be proud of. However, with the current geopolitical context becoming more complicated by the day, it is obvious that we are facing increasing competition from other global players, particularly the United States and China. To secure Europe's leadership in life science, biotech, and food innovation, we must mobilize both public and private investment, especially for late-stage scale-up activities that require substantial capital. The financing gap remains a major challenge, preventing Europe's biotech firms, agri-tech innovators, and food tech pioneers from expanding and competing on a global scale. Bridging this gap is essential for turning Europe's research excellence into commercially viable, world-leading businesses. At the same time, we must ensure that regulation facilitates rather than hinders innovation. In life science and food biotech, regulatory complexity often delays breakthroughs and reaching the market. Streamlining approval processes without compromising safety and sustainability will be key to accelerating Europe's ability to bring cutting-edge solutions in healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and sustainable food production to consumers and patients. Another critical pillar is talent. These sectors are rapidly evolving, driven by breakthroughs in advanced food technologies, biotechnology, and sustainable agriculture, among others. Investing in specialized education and workforce upskilling will ensure Europe remains in the forefront of innovation, equipping researchers and industry professionals with the skills needed to drive the next wave of biotech and food tech advancements. At the European Investment Bank Group, we are committed to supporting these efforts. We recognize the importance of fostering robust financial ecosystem that can support the growth and development of these industries. This includes providing funding for research and development, supporting startups and growth companies, and facilitating public companies and public-private partnerships that can drive innovation and resilience across the full supply chain. With our AAA credit rating, we are ideally positioned to offer competitive financing, passing the cost advantages to clients through attractive loan conditions. At the EIB Group, we backed project benefits from both financial and technical due diligence, lowering investment risk and catalyzing additional funding for private and institutional investors. The European Investment Fund plays a key role in strengthening Europe's life science and healthcare ecosystem. Since its inception, the EIF has committed over 5 billion euros to European technology transfer, venture and growth capital funds, supporting more than 1,000 life science companies. Its strategic priorities include supporting new and emerging life science teams across the EU, accelerating the translation of research into commercial solutions, expanding investments in underserved sectors such as advanced biomanufacturing, agri-tech, and food innovations, strengthening the position of established life science investors in Europe. We're actively shaping Europe's innovation landscape and remain fully committed to strengthen the ecosystem. In conclusion, while the challenges we face in the biotech, life science, and food sectors are significant, they present equally great opportunities. By working together, we can build a more competitive, innovative, and sustainable European ecosystem that can support talent, drives investments, and ensures long-term global leadership. The European Investment Bank Group is committed to play a role in this endeavor, and we look forward to collaborating with the industry, investors, and policymakers to build a high and brighter future for Europe. I do look forward to hearing the views of our distinguished speakers here today. Thank you, and I wish you all a productive and engaging discussions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Kyriakos. And now I'm delighted to welcome to the stage the European Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation, Ekaterina Zaharyeva.
Vice President Kakouris, distinguished guests, it is an honor to introduce this panel that will discuss the present and the future of key strategic sectors such as food, biotech, and life sciences. These industries are not only crucial for our well-being, but also represent one of the most dynamic frontiers of innovation and economic growth. At the heart of this transformation is Europe's thriving startup ecosystem, which for the first time has been added to my portfolio responsibilities together with research and innovation. Over the past decade, the number of European startups has increased, with venture capital investment exceeding 90 billion euros in 2023. Europe is now home to over 400 unicorns, with more than 50 new ones emerging just last year. Over the past 7 years, we have also transformed the European Innovation Council into Europe's largest deep tech investor, supporting several of the European startups that have emerged since then, half of them actually in life sciences. In fact, life sciences startups are among the most promising, with biotech and medtech companies attracting over 15 billion euros in funding in 2023. These figures underscore the importance of life sciences as a high-impact, high-growth sector. We can be proud of the European strengths that have led to these achievements. First is our talent, our biggest strength, I believe. Our academic excellence is undisputed. Despite representing just 5% of the global population, Europe is home to 42% of the world's top 100 life science universities. This intellectual capital provides a strong foundation for breakthrough research and innovation. Second, we boost world-leading innovation hubs such as Medicon Valley in Denmark and Sweden, home to over 1,100 companies employing more than 70,000 people, and the Bio Valley region spanning France, Germany, and Switzerland. These hubs are driving next-generation advancements in biotech and pharma. And our pan-European strategic initiatives act as catalyzers. In partnership with the EIB, the European Commission is closing financial gaps, for example, through the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund and the ESC Fund. But let's be frank. Europe faces fierce competition, particularly from China and the United States, which are rapidly expanding their technology investments and capabilities. There are areas where we must improve to maintain our leadership, and for this reason, I will launch a startup and scale-up strategy in June. I'll mention a couple of the problems. They are well known, but first, European companies do not easily scale up in Europe, as the Vice President said. We must address persistent funding gaps in scaling high-risk tech companies. And I can inform you that we are working very intensively with EIB and hopefully to introduce the scale-up fund really very fast, with the private sector, of course. Second, Europe is excellent in research, but faces challenges in commercializing this discovery. Actually, we are home of the largest and a well-known program in the world for research and innovation, actually, Horizon Europe. And we are excellent in research and innovation. But we are really very slow, unfortunately, in commercializing this excellent discovery. And third is our fragmentation. I think is actually, to be frank, our biggest problem in scaling up and deployment on the market. We are saying that we are a single market, but actually, in fact, we are not. We have regulatory barriers. I spoke before we start this panel with excellent panelists that you are going to listen after me. And this is really the biggest challenge. And I can assure you that the Commission is really very focused on delivering this simplification. So we are working very intensively to introduce at the end of the year or in the beginning of the next, the 28 regime and the European Innovation Act, aimed at streamlining regulations, reducing bureaucratic delays, and creating a more predictable pathway to the market entry. Going back to the life sciences, by this summer, I'm committed to shape a forward-looking life science strategy that ensures Europe remains at the front of this vital sector. We will be launching the consultation soon, and I really invite you to respond to it with your ideas. And actually, by the way, now we are under public consultation for the startup and scale-up strategy, so those of you who have interest to respond to the question, please do it. So I wish you a productive discussion. I'm sure that there will be excellent ideas will come up from this panel. And I can assure you that we listen to your problems, and Commission is very determined to deliver on the problems that are well known, to fill the gap of financial gap, but most importantly on simplification and make the lives of researchers, innovators, and business easier. Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Well, now it's a great pleasure for me to invite my panel onto the stage. So please welcome Clara Sattler de Souza Ibreto, who is Head of Europe Region for Philips, Mads Krogsgaard Thomsen, Chief Executive Officer for Novo Nordisk Fonden, Marta Ortega Valle, who is Co-Founder and Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at Green Light Biosciences, Mary McCarthy from Sofinova, where she's a partner, and Eric de Montgolfier, who is CEO of Invest Europe. So welcome to you all. Lovely to have you on stage with me. Now, just off the back of what Commissioner was just saying, if I could see the audience, so could the lights go down a tiny bit? Could the lights go down a little tiny little bit, just so that I can see the audience? Our wonderful technical crew? Just a little bit, please? Anyway, thank you. Hands up if you know, or you can shout out to me, some of the 400 unicorns Europe has. Tell me one.
I can tell you 30.
Great. Okay, good. Because I would say, and the show of hands tells me, we don't know them. If we knew the unicorns in America, everybody could say who they are. We don't know those 400. And you are people who really might know. Anyway, let's move on to our panel discussion. Okay, so we're going to start setting the scene here with a little bit about all of you. And I'm going to start actually with Clara. A little bit about your company, Philips. It's not really known for life sciences or food. So tell us a bit about the work that you do and how it is here in Europe.
Yeah, thank you so much. Evidently, I hope we would be known for our medtech play and our impact on the healthcare sector. And it's very funny for me here on the panel because I feel very old because I'm standing here for a long-standing industry player. So some of our challenges will actually be more classical. Philips is an EU-headquartered, very innovative and sustainable health technology company. And we hope that we can actually have an impact in addressing the European health systems challenges by the innovation that we bring to the market. We invest nearly 10% of our revenue in research and development and do so at a higher share than most of our peers. We are one of the top 5 patent applicants in medtech, and I hold a background in that area, so it's always a particular pleasure to me. And we are also a leader in AI patent applications in healthcare. So, and as I already said, also sustainability for us is a major topic. So we invest about 263 million euros specifically in sustainable innovation in the last year. So we're looking at projects in the area of circular innovation to enable reuse. The company is based in the Eindhoven area with our research center, so not too far from here, so I had to travel, but not very far. For over 130 years, we are part of a local ecosystem, the Brainport ecosystem, with the high-tech campus in Eindhoven, which is the smartest square kilometer in the Netherlands, with more than 160 companies and institutes, some 11,000 researchers, developers and entrepreneurs. And we do share knowledge and research facilities, test labs with other campus companies. We work in a very collaborative manner across Europe. So I think that's why I would love to say that we're proudly European. We work with SMEs in our value chain. We work with the big university and research institutes and hospitals. Long-standing partners, if it would, for example, include the Charité. So I just came in from Berlin, the University Medical Center in Utrecht, or the Hospice de Lyon. We work very closely with a vibrant startup ecosystem, both through financing ourselves, as well as through coaching. We're very actively encouraging startups to drive within our Eindhoven ecosystem. We create spin-offs and inward investment in health tech. And so we are actually on that side of things, hopefully helping to carry through innovation. I think we will see as we move through the panel that evidently we are also facing our challenges in that environment. So we should largely be able to provide our own funding. We will see that I think some of those challenges are still very shared to some of the other co-panelists here.
Well, Clara, I was listening to all of that and I was seeing you smile your way through it as if everything is perfect, but we're here to dig into what's not perfect. So what are the challenges?
Well, I think for me, evidently, we are innovating, we are European, right? So it is very natural for us to drive innovation here in Europe. And then still, sometimes I find myself questioning whether I want to do that or I want to go somewhere else.
Where would you
evidently, I will use the example of the EU regulatory landscape that also for us is very challenging. I will use the medical device regulation as that's the one closest to my heart. With that piece of legislation, the average certification time has approximately doubled to 12 to 24 months for a MedTech device. In the US, it takes me 6 months to get the same device through. Certification costs have increased to 260% since 2021. The medical device regulation does not fully enable sustainable medical devices. It leaves to countries, talking about the single market, to handle reprocessing, with some countries completely banning it. And that clearly, for us, for example, is one of the challenges where I find myself now questioning about where do I go to market first. And while there was a clear answer that Europe was the place to go to market first because it was the fastest, it was least bureaucratic, now the answer is the US. And we would go first in the US. And that is something that pains me to see.
Thank you, Clara. I'm going to just go through the panel and then we can interact a little bit more with your participation, I hope. So Mads, I would love you to talk to us a little bit about, you have a long time working in the field of trying to accelerate and boost innovation. What is the best way to do that?
Well, first I worked more than 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry, heading up R&D, and realized that the ecosystem was really functional. European Medicines Agency works, I would say the whole ecosystem up to market approval works. So coming 4 years ago to the Novo Nordisk Foundation, which grants out 1.5, 1.6 billion euros annually within human health and planetary health, there are so many other dysfunctional areas. And just to highlight a couple of the steps in the value chain that are dysfunctional, we contributed to the Danish National Life Science Strategy that was approved a few months ago. And if you go all the way from basic research through to regulatory approval, there are a number of reasons why European startups in more than 50% of the cases exit Europe, and I'll mention just a couple of them. First is the transition from basic research at universities into startup companies. There we realized way too little was happening in Denmark. We've created a Bioinnovation Institute with seasoned experts in the field of spinning out companies and creating business models and patent strategies. It has led to 120 new companies in Denmark over the last 5 years that probably would not have occurred. So the spin-out phase and the help you need to create a small company strategy is one element I think Europe needs, because we're all like Denmark in reality. The next one would be, as you need Series A, B, and C financing, we see several valleys of death. There's simply too little risk-willing capital in this continent. we need to attract all kinds of funders, like foundations, like sovereign funds, like venture cap funds, maybe from the US, who see the light in Europe, that we really need to come together, and the time to act is now if Europe wants a chance. We also then later on realized that as you want to scale up, there's the big issue that when I was doing medicines, I could, if I didn't have factories myself, I could phone a whole range of contract manufacturing organizations. They would do the product for me the day after. That does not exist neither in deep tech, nor does it exist in biosolutions. So if you have a biopesticide or you have some fermentation product, there's nowhere to go. There are no CMOs. We need to fix that problem also in Europe, because otherwise the only place to go is the US or China, and that's not what we want as European citizens. And then ultimately, as you head for regulatory approval after the scale-up and proof of concept and whatnot, there's the major issue that we don't have a simple, we have a rigid, you mentioned medtech. In biosolutions, I know of several companies that we have co-created that have left Denmark and Europe to go to the US, because there you get approval of a biosolution product, whether it's fermentation or somehow bio-based, in 1 to 2 years. In Europe, it takes 6 to 7 years, and these biodegradable products, they are treated as hazardous chemistry, according to guidelines that are still back from the 1990s. So I think there's a lot to do, and the best thing that has happened with Mr. Trump and China and Putin is that we all realize that now is the time to act, and as a foundation, we are more than willing to work with EIB and the European various organizations, Horizon, etc., etc.
Do you think there need to be more scientists as regulators?
That what, sorry?
More scientists as regulators.
Well, I think you need the system for regulating, and it has to be more science-based and less, you can say, safety first is a good principle, but we are over-precautionary, and it's not a natural flow, for instance, in the field of biosolutions. I don't think we necessarily lack so much scientific talent in Europe, because I think we're going to see a flow from west across the Atlantic to Europe, and we should leverage that opportunity, actually.
Well, speaking of scientific talent that flowed across the Atlantic, but is coming back to us, Marta, you're based in Boston, you have MIT roots there, but you are refinding ground in Seville and other places as well. I just wanted to go back to something the Commissioner said, actually. She was talking about our academic excellence in universities here. You also mentioned to me it's not for lack of talent that there are issues here. But I don't know if anybody happens to know, she also mentioned the largest R&D program, the Horizon project. How many unicorns came out of that? Does anybody happen to know that? You can shout out an answer. Okay, right. So then, Marta, tell us about your experience, because I think you have seen both sides.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So Greenlight Biosciences is a company that is born in the United States. It was born 10 years ago. And we created a platform, a biocontrol platform that industrialized nature. We used the biotechnology to use a natural mode of action that can control pests in the field in a very selective, in a very effective, and without toxic residue. So that's truly a breakthrough in the way in which we have thought about helping farmers control pests and protect yield and productivity. And it's the result of the advances in the field, right? We are starting to see that we are getting very sophisticated in designing and controlling and scaling up nature. So Greenlight in the United States found a home where we were nurtured with a lot of money. We were able to establish our R&D facility in RTP. We have our manufacturing in Rochester, New York. And we were able to get our products approved in 24 months. And then we went to Brazil, and we were able to get our products approved in 12 months, right? So 2 years ago, my team came to me and said, Marta, we need to put a research station in Seville. And I thought, oh my God, no one is going to believe that it was not my idea. Because I think Seville is a wonderful place to be and do stuff, right? So you would ask, why civil? Well, first of all, because Europe, I think, is a leader in food. And agriculture is at the core of our culture and our economy. So Europe is agriculture and high quality food systems and other things, but absolutely it is known for that. And then also because as the Romans found out and later on the Arabs found out, the Guadalquivir is a unique fertile ground with excellent weather, and you can do a lot of field trial development. For agriculture, field trials are like clinical trials. Plants are our patients, and we have to cure them. And we want to do as many phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3s as we can in a year. And that geographical area is the place where larger companies are also based for developing their products. So that was the inception of why we came back here. However, I have to say that we are new to the family of the EIB with a facility that we signed last year. And through the process of engaging with Europe, we realized that there is a real opportunity. So hidden below the bad news of regulatory the good news, at least for the area where we are working on, is that we find the talent. We are an excellent employer for the new generations. Not everybody needs to go to Boston and to MIT, right? I mean, I'm happy for the opportunity I had, but I do believe that many times I would have liked to stay here and do the same, but I couldn't. It was not possible. But now it's enriched that we put forward that opportunity to our younger generation. And then, as we were engaging with the European Commission, we truly saw this desire of simplification. So when we talk about the window of opportunity that Europe has now, it's truly real that a lot of technologies and companies and great people in the US in the next 12 months are going to see their world shattered in ways that were unbelievable before, but are real now. And if Europe timely signals that truly we're going to do the homework to reduce that regulatory process and get closer to other geographies, and that we are really committed to help markets adopt the innovations, I think we can make it, and I'm sure the capital and the money will be there to bridge the companies from the moment in which they start to have revenue to the break-even, that late stage, larger tickets that we want in Europe. Because I want to share a final thought. In my opinion, an innovation is not an innovation if it has not reached the market and solved a problem that couldn't be solved before. Mm-hmm. So we cannot say we innovate because we do a lot of research if we cannot take it through the finish line to impact, because we don't change the world in the direction we want to change it.
So I want to use that word innovation, and also a word you used which just has sat with me since you mentioned it. You were nourished in the US. You were in this fabulous academic environment in a wonderful city, and it actually echoes something Clara was saying. You said you work in Eindhoven with great universities. I want to just ask, what is the benefit of having really strong R&D science parks, or that collaboration, that conversation between university, between the startup industry, and just a better education of learning from a young age? It was one word that came up when it came to actually pensions yesterday, but educating younger people to know how to shift ideas into innovation.
So I think that if I can add, I think we need some examples we need to get some of the companies that are here and some other companies engaging that younger generation and showing it can be done.
Mads.
Yeah, just to add to that, at least in our country, first of all, in primary school, kids are not having shiny eyes thinking about Mother Nature and biotechnology and green transition. The school system has not favored that. So one of the things we are realizing is that by stimulating some of those topics, natural sciences, etc., with examples, with the kits that they can use in the labs and so on, actually makes more of them want later on to go down that alley at universities. And that is actually an issue because our population is aging and we need at least a significant proportion of the young ones. So I think getting them early on board with the fascination of natural and technical and of course also, you can say, other sciences.
Thank you, Mads. Well, Mary, I know that you are a scientist yourself. You've moved into the financial world now, and you see an awful lot of startups coming through. And for you, we were just chatting outside, if there's a regulation period of 7 years, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. But I think some of the solutions that the startups have to that problem, you've already heard that they end up going to the US for a shorter pathway. But that's only one of the problems, of course. So first of all, I agree with all the things being said. So I'm trying to, tie it into where I'm sitting in the ecosystem. As a VC investor, I'm investing in agriculture, food, chemicals, and materials in biotech, biosolutions. And it's different than investing in AI, for example, because we're making real products. So a lot of things come into play there. So on the one hand, yes, we innovate, but innovation is only successful when it is executed and scaled and brought to market. And for that, for example, for food, if you want to bring something to market, it is something on top of everything we've had here. It's also emotion. We eat it, we put it into our mouths. So if I'm hearing something, beer is brewed, cheese is, created from microorganisms, but if we try to make meat out of microorganisms, we're all getting, a feeling of, ooh, do I want to eat that? So there's a huge amount of emotion going on around food. So for all of the challenges we've talked about so far, this comes on top when you look at food because we need to have a market demand. So the opportunity there, of course, is for startups to have food ingredients. So it's going in as an ingredient. We need more protein. We need to be able to create protein rather than just taking it from animals. And that's, I think, a very, very it's a big gap from a European perspective. If we can decrease our reliance on, animal, whether it's for dairy or for, meat, we can really, really gain in sustainability, number one, but number two is our competitiveness, and that will also translate into European security if we are able to stand on our own feet rather than importing things from that perspective. To touch on education, it's something very, very close to my heart. My sister she works at UNESCO. She's all about STEM. Her whole life is about STEM. So it's exactly as you already said, we need to encourage our children to have an interest in science, because it's only then that in fact, the children can educate the parents about science as well. So it's super, super important. And STEM education, I'm saying it specifically, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and maths, but STEM education is about getting those faculties to work together. And that's the difference. It's not just doing a science subject, it's being able to go from the small of a test tube in a lab right up to a big scaling up. So there's a huge amount of engineering, and that gets me to my last point, which is about scaling, where if you were an innovator and I call it 0 to 1, you've got a new invention, great, but it needs to go from 1 to 1 million to make any difference or any impact at all. And that's where I see a big opportunity for partnerships with corporates, and that's not an easy road, because I've been a corporate, so I know what it's like from different perspectives. But we need to leverage the strengths of a startup, which is more on the innovation side, and the strengths of a corporate, because corporates know how to scale. And if we can incentivize that, then we really have something. And it more often than not goes wrong, which I have lots of scars from experiences there, but I still believe that's the way to go. From having been in a corporate and seen really 400 kiloton production plants running, and it's just mind-boggling how big that is, and to be able to have the competences to run that is very different than doing something in a fume cupboard. So
I think, Clara, you want to...
Yeah, I just would want to attach myself to that, right? The way I put it is very similar, actually. I always put it, the question is whether the big corporate gets to innovate faster or the startup gets to scale faster. And that's why, to your question, collaboration is so essential, because then we can help, you can help us to innovate faster on the startup side, and we can help you to scale faster, because that's what we know how to do, and that's what we have, which is reach. And that's why those ecosystems for us are so essential in making stuff actually happen in the real world. And evidently, you know, for me that is a very natural perspective. Since I'm running a business, actually I have to make it happen in the real world. Otherwise, it's not worth all that much.
I just wanted to add on the STEM point. A lot of people now call it STEAM because they add the A for art and the creativity that is absolutely vital to science and technology as well. You did make me smile about needing more protein, because literally just this morning, as a small aside, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and the presenters were joking about the proliferation of a little egg and spinach, and how they have certainly marked up the price of a little egg and spinach. So young people have certainly got the memo about the need for protein. So perhaps we need a conversation about what type of protein we need in the future. Eric, we haven't heard your voice yet, but it's a very important voice. Again, you have a long and very steamed history working and trying to figure out the problems. So talk to us about what goes well, what doesn't work.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for having me today. Private equity and venture capital play an irreplaceable role in shaping the future of biotech, food, and life sciences in Europe, and has done so for half a century already. And that role is only growing. These industries rely on innovation, and we contribute to funding it, from early breakthroughs in labs to scaling high-impact companies. That's how we ensure Europe stays competitive in some of the most critical sectors of our time. But right now, I must say, we have a challenge. There's a market failure in early-stage investment from our perspective. While there's now more capital available for companies at later stages, and I would like to congratulate Sofina for its latest fundraising, which has been announced on Monday, and for Novo Holdings' continuous support on these topics as well. There is an issue for early-stage companies, the ones working on the next big breakthroughs, because they're just struggling to secure funding. And it's a shame, because European VC is actually the leader clearly in Europe versus US VC on that specific segment. So if we let this innovation gap grow, we risk affecting the European foundations in the industry. And worse, as was mentioned already several times, the best ideas might end up going elsewhere, taking talent, technology, and economic growth with them. Invest Europe is publishing the authoritative data on venture capital, private equity, and infrastructure fund managers. So I will share some of the trends with you so that you understand why I'm actually worried. Invest Europe's data confirm these declines in venture capital committed between 2021 and 2023 are occurring amongst almost all stakeholders. While the decline slowed a bit in 2023, the market has not yet fully stabilized. Banks, fund of funds, insurance companies, family offices, private individuals, and government agencies have seen actually their funding scaled back in the last couple of years. Corporate investors, endowments, and foundations remain a strong funding source, but with very high volatility. while pension funds have slightly increased their commitments over the last couple of years. So in essence, the COVID-19 biotech investment boom quickly faded, and now we need to reset and rebuild for the future.
Eric, I'd love you to tell us about how you view the collaboration that is possible between all the various money pots, the public, the private. What is the best form of collaboration and how can it work quickly?
Well, public funding must complement, not compete with private capital to make financing agile, easy to navigate and efficient. The goal is really clear. We need to attract and retain capital at every stage of innovation, to echo what my co-panelists have said earlier. Collaboration between public institutions and private equity and venture capital firms therefore plays an important role in filling this gap. Public institutions provide policy frameworks, regulatory support, and early-stage funding when appropriate, while private venture capital is actually focusing on market discipline, scalability, and strategic expertise. But even there are some challenges at the moment. Government-backed venture capital has actually declined more than private venture capital since 2022. There are a number of reasons for that. Government agencies' decline indicates budget constraints, and government-backed funding is also under pressure. The current MMF under InvestEU is being used up faster than expected because the needs are there, and the EIF is working hard to deploy funds quickly. But life sciences was not a priority in the InvestEU program. And as you're aware, demand is growing and we need to think bigger. So as demand grows, we need to ask ourselves, how do we expand both models and how do we improve interactions between public institutions and private investors? And well, I think there are a number of possibilities that we should explore. One of them that's been mentioned also is that Europe must work effectively together to ensure the efficient allocations of investments across the EU. Right now, national investment regulations vary too much, making it complex and slow to deploy capital across borders. So the promising idea that I heard earlier via the Commissioner is actually the 28th regime as a means to solve this fragmentation. It's a framework that harmonizes rules across Europe and makes it easier for investors to back startups and scale-ups. So this really could create a more predictable environment for private investment. But again, we come back to simplification. It needs to be designed right. If it's simply added another level of complexity, it won't work. The focus must be on ambition, simplification, removing fragmentation across national markets, and last but not least, ensuring that capital flows quickly to the companies that need it most.
Mary.
I just want to comment on that because in my former life, I live in the Netherlands the last 25 years. You hear I'm not Dutch, I am Irish. That conclusion was also right. So what I saw there when I was a small investor is that on the one hand you've got national funding, but on the other hand then you've got province level. So I was in a fund where in fact I had to make the startup stay in my little postage stamp part of postage stamp, the Netherlands. Sorry to the Dutch, but the Dutch are super, but it's really, really small. And this is a big challenge because if you have a clause in your shareholders agreement that says you have to stay in Limburg, for example, this is a challenge if you're looking for an investor to come from outside. And if you say, okay, I'm going to, Ireland is going to invest in me, I'll move to Ireland, but you can't. And if you do, it's just, so it's like we talked about yesterday in terms of the single market, you also should have a single, from this perspective as well, that we shouldn't think, well, you're moving from one country to another in Europe, that's competition. We should think of ourselves as one Europe, and the competition is outside of Europe. And, I think that's a key point, because the startups have a lot of constraints when they're trying to find their capital. And if we all have constraints on the capital we can give them, then I'm lucky now. Sophie Nova have much less constraints than when I was a small local investor. But it's just to illustrate the point of they start small and they have already constraints before we even meet them. And then we have to navigate that.
Well, that's really fascinating because, again, one of the top lines that has sat in my head since yesterday was Maria Luisa Albuquerque, who said that Europe should have one Silicon Valley, not 27. And she said she doesn't care where it is. I mean, when we think about the US, of course, Marta, you know this all too well. We all know we can think of two hotspots of investment and brilliant research and that kind of seedbed of unicorn exploration. China, we can think again, most of us will know one or two. There are city spots and university spots. So where should that be?
So from the perspective of biotechnology applied to agriculture, I already mentioned that there is an area for research and development, but I have to say that when you bring products to farmers, you go everywhere, and you work everywhere, and you collaborate with universities in all places in Europe. So even if there is a concentration of a particular phase of development in a geography in Europe, the new frontiers for development in agriculture can uplift this type of high-quality programs in many places. So we shouldn't get nervous because there is a place that has a concentration of talent. In fact, you want that because you want people to move from company to company. For an example, just as an example, we have a very sophisticated operation in Seville, a large field trial development station that generally a startup takes a lot of time and money to build. So that facility that we use at 80% of its capacity has a 20% that we are going to have open for small biotech companies that are developing sustainable innovations for agriculture. So just by the fact that we are there and that we have this open innovation mindset, it makes sense that other companies reuse a research that is already built to advance faster. So there are positives to have certain concentration of activities, but that doesn't mean that then innovation for agriculture will only happen there. It will happen everywhere, because nowadays I have employees everywhere, and they are innovating with us. We don't need to be collocated. So,
I know, Mads, you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add that I totally agree. I mean, it's not a secret that the Danish government, they want to create a so-called mini Kendall Square, like in Boston, called Innovation District Copenhagen. But when that is said, and is driven, of course, by the pharma sector, by the biosolution sector that exists in that region, but when that is said, I would fully agree that it should be all over Europe, because communication, we're in the same time zones, all can do Teams meetings. We are funding a regenerative medicine center where the three nodes, so to speak, are in Copenhagen, Leiden in the Netherlands, and Melbourne, Australia. And they're running 60 projects within regenerative medicine, and it's working extremely well, even despite the time zone differences. So I don't think we should be competing. Like when the EU wants to create 5 so-called AI gigafactories with all the software algorithms, etc., needed to be a world leader in any given specific discipline, whether it's pharma, whether it's biosolutions, or whatever, deep tech. It doesn't really matter whether it's in Paris, Munich, whether it's Copenhagen or Stockholm. It will be accessible for everyone. So I don't think we should compete. The big issue is that we're still too fragmented. We're not working closely enough together, considering that we are just one small continent.
Well, that brings us back to what Eric was saying, which is that, and it's something that perhaps we don't discuss enough. We often have in all sorts of conferences the discussion about, Europe's risk averse when it comes to money, but we don't often have the conversation that we are internally competitive, even commune to commune. So that's another conversation that perhaps needs to be explored more. Eric, you want to add?
Yeah, it's true that when you look at the way innovation is financed across Europe, you see that French institutions are financing French venture capital firms. And we have the same issue replicated on literally every country. So I think that the important topic that we should also discuss today is access to capital, because the access to capital, to venture capital, is as scarce as venture capital has scarce resources to devote to typically life sciences. And it's really important to mention that there's something that should be done, I think, at European level to eliminate these frictions and this limited access to capital. We need to structure the financial ecosystem to support investment across all stages and all investors, not just when companies are ready to scale. It's too late, basically. So that means that adapting regulatory framework should happen for pension funds, for insurance companies, for banks, among others, to make long-term investment in innovation more attractive. Today, these institutional investors are disincentivized to invest in venture capital, which itself has less means than it should to support innovation. And that should go, because it's too important for us to let that stay too long. Secondly, we can also do targeted actions to make this happen. For smaller startups, public funding should step in to bridge the market failure. I indicated earlier that actually public institutions were investing less in proportion in the decline that other private venture capital. Normally, in I would say economic theory, public institutions should compensate at least partly what the public markets can provide in terms of funding. That did not happen. So this needs, I think, to be solved as well, while making sure that larger scaling companies find the appropriate financing. And it was very encouraging to hear the Commissioner telling us that with the EIB, they were thinking about a new program to support specifically life sciences and biotech.
I know that we're having a conversation which is steered for obvious reasons towards money and the need for raising the correct pipelines and pillars for everything to get to market, for the innovation to reach the people. Now, when a young person looks around and thinks, what will I work in? I want to bring it back to the topic, which is about food, life sciences, things that we need in our lives for our longevity, and we have an aging demographic here as well. MedTech, for example, as well. Why would a person in Europe, a young student in Europe, want to study in these realms other than thinking, oh, I must go and study tech, I must do AI, I must go and become a financier? Why should they study these topics?
Well, when you talk to your kids, they all talk about we need to save the earth, the climate is going, array, etc. So the things that concern them in terms of biodiversity, climate mitigation, in terms of green transition of society, they are all driven by scientific disciplines, STEM plus a few others. So the sheer reason that they are more preoccupied by the globe, maybe even than their parents are, should drive them in that direction. And we should convince them that only with their contributions going forward will we actually solve the problems, because we need them in a demographic situation where we're getting to be too many old people and too many young ones, too few young ones to actually do the science. So we need to actually instill that in their minds early on.
Well, I won't go down the conversation topic of the green transition and the digitalization being completely divergent because of the need for water and various other things, but I will open it up to the floor. So if we could have the lights down and the lights up, I would love to ask for your questions from the floor. So I am beginning to see faces now. So have anybody here, have you any questions for our panel? I'm not going to have the excuse that the first panel after the first day is a quiet one. I know that you all have strong voices and thoughts and ideas, so any questions to our panel? Yes, I would love a question from you, and if you can introduce yourself as well. The gentleman who knows at least 30 unicorns in Europe.
And I'm PJ Parson from venture capital firm North Zone. And that's probably why I know 30, because we've backed quite a few of them, including Spotify. Anyway, a recurring theme here is the problem of fragmentation. And it seems like that's the sort of the endemic problem that we're not really getting to the heart of. I also see that even EIB has that challenge to deal with all the sort of the member states' respective needs. But do you see a path to actually eliminate that apart from the 28th member state or the administrative 28th state, which I think is a great idea, and it will definitely improve things for startup ecosystem. But do you see what are the most important things to do to eliminate this fragmentation, which seems to be the core of the problem?
Well, at least one way, if you're a philanthropy is it not working? Okay, like the Nunos Foundation, we historically have awarded grants to investigators, scientific investigators, let's say in Denmark or Sweden or so. Now that we're going pan-European, we will almost demand collaboration between universities. So just like we are funding research centers with nodes in different European countries, we will also have grants where you can have a principal investigator, but then you need co-PIs in other European countries, really forcing the best of academia to work closer together. Otherwise, they won't get a grant. So that's one way of doing it. Another is, of course, doing hotspot mapping of a given scientific discipline, and then having identified the hottest of those hotspots, then you actually offer them a collaboration where that has to be synergistic in some shape or form.
So I want to take your point and put the fragmentation in the context of the go-to-market and the fragmented or many steps regulatory process. And I think that that's a barrier that if the simplification gets to solve, at least for frontier technologies, we're going to see a number of technologies that are ready to be used, getting into the market, and then a lot of incentive for LPs to give money to venture groups to capture those opportunities. So we have a backlog of technologies that are ready to be used, waiting at the door of the regulatory. And that process, which is fragmented today, requires extra attention, because we see that other sophisticated regulators, they do it in a centralized manner and that they do it in less time. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We are not talking about not doing it responsibly, making sure that what we put in the field is safe. It can be done. It's just political willingness and really putting that as also as a security priority, because we want to be able to grow the food. We're going to need to have food sovereignty as well, right? So that's another thought about fragmentation that will incentivize the creation of a stronger market for investment.
Eric?
Just two comments on that one. One of the answers is stopping gold plating at member state level of European legislation when it's incorporated into a member state's law. That would help tremendously on a lot of different levels. That's one. The second is tax incentives, but I won't go that route too much, except to mention that grants are valuable tools, but they are slow, burdened by lengthy applications and bureaucratic hurdles. If you think at tax credits, on the other hand, it gives companies immediate, predictable financial relief, allowing startups to reinvest in R&D, in talent, and many other things. And I think that in terms of model, we should think more in terms of Europe as trying to push for actually tax credits, i.e. member states' decisions on that could be actually Europeanized versus grants, which I think have shown its limits.
Yeah, a quick comment. Fragmentation is also at the level of between academia. You can say, let's take plant-based foods, for instance. You have the farmers, those that create the new seeds for the crops. You have like the food industry. All of these, if we want, let's say, plant-based foods to take off, our impression has been that the way to get them together is you've been using open source innovation, where there's no patenting, it's an IP-free environment. Then after the given project has taken place, then everybody's free to take out patents, etc., etc. But this has really facilitated the various actors to become not fragmented, but to work together in one ecosystem. So I think that's something that also, even in pharmaceuticals, has turned out to work in a project that we've called Odin. I think we should try to do more of that, because many of these areas are pre-competitive rather than competitive per se.
Mm-hmm. Because adding to that, if a startup has to create their own value, their customer channels, that is huge work and it has huge costs. If they can leverage the corporate down the line, that you can use their channels, there's value to be shared there. And I think it's about value sharing at the end of the day across the whole chain of innovation.
I just want to bring it back to you. I think you still have the microphone. Yes, what is your solution?
If this works, yeah. I'm not sure if I have a solution other than that there are a couple of concepts that I think sort of are always in the way, and it's that you need to sort of please a certain local government, or you're trying to sort of shape the legislation to make something specific happen, because there's always an unintended consequence. I'm not against regulation. I think a regulation is very important to sort of get larger markets to work together. But I think in general, I think we are missing the mark in many regulatory contexts, and it's not this subject specifically, but GDPR was a very interesting idea that I think was about protecting us to be basically leveraged by the big platform companies. And Europe went ahead and did that regulation. But what actually happened was that all the media companies that were putting all the sort of investments into creating the content, they were the ones that were hit, and the platform companies, the big American companies, they basically got a free pass from this regulatory thing. And I think the EU really should look a lot more into sort of the unintended consequences of what can happen. And most of those are, you know, just getting us more and more fragmented and weaker in this new environment.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor? We have great. Can we have quick questions, because I have maybe 5 minutes left. So quick questions, quick answers, and quick microphone movement.
Helmut von Glasenapp, European Long-Term Investors Association, the Association of National Promotional Banks and Institutions.
Not that quick.
So the public investors. Yesterday, Majut Falkstedt from the EIF said, if I would be put myself in the shoes of a startup, I would go to the US for the reason of valuation. And we hear that the European Commission is reflecting about changes in the Savings and Investment Union. And I would be interested to learn from the panel, what do you think we could do in Europe to have better valuation, better exit possibilities for investors, so that the companies are attracted to stay in Europe?
Thank you. I will take that question. I will also take the question right at the back, if the microphone could move right to the back. And I will allow our wonderful panel, who these latecomers have missed, a little bit of time to just summarize in about 3 minutes your main points. But I'm going to take this question at the back as well to combine it.
Thank you very much. My name is Kate Pelk. I'm a final PhD candidate at Aalborg University in Denmark. It was a very inspiring discussion, and it has actually inspired an idea to develop a multidisciplinary project proposal on educating young children in primary school on themes that all of you talked about: entrepreneurship, venture capital, investment, STEM, agri-food, etc. In my free time, I'm also supporting academics in developing beats for Horizon Europe, etc. So I am very interested in exploring with you panelists, with other people here, an opportunity of jointly developing this kind of project. I will be here available. If you would like to take it further, I'll be really happy to discuss it. Thank you.
I think that's a private conversation that can be taken into the break, but we wish you the very best of luck, and I think we all support those ideas. But we have the first question there as well, and in about three-ish minutes, would you like to just answer the question, but also summarize everything we've said in the last hour, because we now have literally doubled the population in the room.
Yeah, I think I would just repeat that I do believe that capital goes where it's easiest to have impact. At least that's how I look at how we deploy capital. So I would want to urge us again to consider simplification of respective even European legislation, not to talk about local legislation, to really make sure that we can get products to market fast enough in Europe to have the impact on our European, in my case, health systems, because that's what I speak from. I think the urge and the necessity is quite high. So I would love us to see how we can impact that, to look at healthcare not as a cost factor, but as a factor that where better health can promote actually economic growth, and to make sure that we see the investment that we make to also bring the economic return for Europe in that space.
Yeah, I would say that the value chain within life science is not stronger than the weakest link. And we've discussed many of those parts of the value chain, from the translation from basic research into actually spin out companies. We need systematic and concerted efforts to make that happen. There are ways to do that. From the valleys of death that relate to actually funding the growth of these towards Series A, B, and C, and so on, and the scaling up, technologically speaking, to a proof of concept stage and to the commercial stage, where we are definitely lacking European infrastructure and as I mentioned, also more risk-willing capital. So I think we need a concerted effort across Europe in all of these areas.
Well, I think that's a perfect line. We are not stronger than our weakest link, and we can put that across pretty much any conversation. Marta?
I'm in full agreement with what was just said, and I would like just to leave you with a thought. As a company that is in the United States and in Europe and wants to grow in Europe in the next years aggressively, I have to tell you that there is a window of opportunity, that the simplification can signal to other companies in the US that need certainty, and they will come because you have the market and you are aligned with the thought of climate, sustainability, food, and quality. So I encourage everyone to push the ideas that the President introduced in her opening remarks and truly make those regulatory systems simpler, to push all those technologies that are already developed to the market. Because the solutions we need in the next 5 years, they have already been developed. We need to push them in the hands of the farmers and the customers in general.
Thank you. Mary?
If you ask me what I'd like to see us collaborating rather than being in competition with each other as European countries. So we need to have a shared need. We have a shared need, but we have to really identify this shared need. That's the first thing you've got to do for change management. So we need to manage the change that we need to make here, and we need to scale these technologies in a speedy way.
Thank you, Mary. And final short word, Eric.
I'll try. To answer Helmut's question, I think that the savings and investment initiatives that we're talking about is great. I don't think that securitization will serve our industry, but it will certainly serve the banks and self-financing of the European economy. So I'm interested to see what will actually be done for public markets, but for private markets, where today the main means of financing European SMEs. Now to your last question, Lisa, I think that biotech, food and life sciences should be a European priority for competitiveness and must be treated as such, as a long-term strategic investment and financed as well. Second thing, I think that regulatory frameworks must adapt to make long-term investment into biotech and life sciences more attractive. They are not to date. And lastly, I think that public funding must complement private capital in all its capacities, and there are numerous. We've mentioned a number of initiatives, and we welcome all of them.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful panel. Thank you, and good luck with all of the work ahead of you. Thank you. Well, welcome. Welcome to all of those of you who have joined us a touch later. I can see a little collection of people towards that door. As always, plenty of space this side of the room. Feel free to just walk over in this direction. You'll find plenty of chairs. Do come forward. We always like to see faces in the front rows, and I can see plenty of empty chairs over in that side in particular. Thank you for being with us. Thank you again to those of us joining us online. I'm now honored to move to the next section, and to introduce this next section, please welcome to the stage Teresa Ribera, who is Executive Vice President for Clean, Just and Competitive Transition at the European Commission.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Nadia. I was making a joke. Her capacity to innovate impacts even the Luxembourg weather. You have realized how she has made it possible to have a bright and sunny day today in Luxembourg. I was enjoying these very last comments being made by the previous panel, and I liked so much to hear about the low-hanging fruit that is already there, that we need to bet on and to invest and to ensure that we are able to develop, to deploy our capacities. And I was so happy to hear about cooperation mood, because this is what all of this is about, how we can cooperate to improve the quality of life, not only in the best place to live, which probably is Europe, but all over the world, how we can help each other to improve the quality of life. And I say this in a very particular year. This is the year where we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, the moment when we thought that we had achieved a paramount in terms of how we could work together for a better shared future for all. And it is quite a contradiction to see where we are today. Because in fact, what we see every day is that there are common forces challenging this way to understand how we can cooperate for a better world and how we should be thinking in different terms, how we come back, I could say, to the 19th century, where the strength, the force, was the main argument to decide on how to build the future, which is not good news. But if we cooperate together, most of the people in different countries, in different institutions, in the public and private communities, in this room, being represented today in this forum, we may stand up and say that we still want to cooperate for a better world. So I want to express my sincere appreciation for the close cooperation between the European Investment Bank, the European institutions, and all the players that came today to say that we want to work together. In a moment where the European Investment Bank has been a cornerstone for this mission, how we can develop a better world, how we can champion projects that do not only protect our economy, but understand that our economy, our development, relies on a good functioning ecosystem, on a prosperous society, or on a society that wants to invest in its own prosperity. So proud to be part of this big family, including the European Union's Climate and Development Bank. Fueling economic growth, understanding that the creation of wealth does matter, and that when we think about wealth, we need to think about a wealth that lasts and not just a very short-term profit that could not be lasting along the years. We are in a moment that I would qualify as a critical juncture, facing unprecedented challenges such as an intense geopolitical competition. And I come back to this idea of competition, competitiveness. We hear a lot about competing or defending instead of cooperation or thinking on how competitiveness may lie on a balanced approach on social, environmental, and economic aspects. We are living in a rapid technological changes. We are living in a context of uncertainties, and we cannot expect from others what we cannot do on our own. So we should be thinking how we can avoid staying in a corner, how we can identify the best way forward. Building around responses on our strengths, and we have a lot of strengths. We should not relate thinking that there is nothing that can be done. On the contrary, we can identify the must answers. In these turbulent times, this will be more important than ever. And the world is more than 2, 3 big powers. It is lots of people willing to invest in a better future that take into consideration the way we have managed in Europe to commit around our core values to develop a well-functioning society. Of course, still with many things and many challenges ahead, but a dream for most of the human beings in this planet. So we need to resist the temptation to compromise these principles in response to external pressures of uncertainty. On the contrary, we should be developing these principles, these ideas, in order to shape the right responses. Our values should guide our external and internal policies. And this is what we are trying to do in the Commission around different aspects that deal with external threats. And of course, it's been a shake how we can identify security as a main priority that we thought that could be approached in a much more relaxing way. That doesn't seem to be the case. Fostering cooperation rooted in diplomacy, mutual respect, the adherence to the international order, the UN Charter, the borders, the peace, the cooperation, the global governance, the regional or bilateral capacity to find the common ground, the trade, as a means to connect different societies to ensure a much more prosperous life. Internally, translating our values means pursuing sustainable and inclusive growth, which is essential for maintaining a healthy environment, job security, social peace, and preserving the resilience of our society. Europe has the strengths, and we need to navigate these moments. And we have lots of things that we identified as relevant aspects to be sure that our financial communities, our capacities to build around the single market and deepening the single markets, to make the best possible use of our savings, so to turn back to the society with additional proposals are not forgotten or left aside. We all know that the American financial markets have traditionally outperformed the European financial markets. But yet, it is around sustainable finance that Europe leads. It is around these concepts of savings union, building and deepening the single market, using our resources to develop a model of economy that can last and provides comfort and wealth in a shared manner to all, based on our own values, is still the core of the European institutions' mandates. 62% of the European financial markets in terms of assets under management are ESG. That is, have sustainability credentials or characteristics of being sustainable. We have a competitive edge in sustainable finance. In fact, the rest of the world has and continues to look into the European Union as the example to follow. 58 taxonomies in other geographies thought about making across the globe being inspired by the European Union taxonomy, and equally in many other areas on how to identify the risk and how to create the value. Are we going to renounce to that? Of course not. The ESG, the sustainability linked to financial products, has been one of the most important growth trends in the European markets for a very long time already. And it is increasingly happening in many other parts of the world. So, we cannot forget about that. We may need to find ways to simplify the way we proceed. We may need to be more clear on why this matters, but we cannot forget about this. We cannot forget that we want a prosperous economy, that we want to fabric in Europe, that we want the public services that allow us to count on an educated population, medical and health attention for the citizens, capacity to provide opportunities to all, and this means making wise decisions when dealing with finance. Last week, we adopted one of the most relevant strategies so to ensure that we can keep on building this growth narrative and to bet on the European capacities to fabric, to manufacture in Europe. The Clean Industrial Deal is at the heart of the flagship initiatives for the first 100 days of this Commission. This plan is not just a policy. It is Europe's business plan for tackling the climate crisis, boosting competitiveness, and securing a prosperous future for our industries and our citizens. It is clean, it is industrial, it is real. It is clean because if we want to create value, we know that we need to take into consideration such a relevant thing as market forces that do understand that ecosystems, biodiversity, climate, resource efficiency are at the very core of smart decisions when creating wealth. It is industrial because we want to manufacture, we want to innovate, we want to count on high-quality jobs. We want to be sure that we are more resilient, that we combine in a much more healthier manner, global and local, but that we can contribute to the industrial revolution that is already ongoing. And it is real, because we need to partner with different stakeholders, public, private, national, local, international. Markets have developed much more broader, but very small at the same time. It sets out a clear pathway for Europe to lead as a clean manufacturing and innovation powerhouse, something that we have always appreciated, where we can find many other partners all over the world, where we can find how to ensure that our talent, our young talent, remains in Europe. There are 6 key pillars guiding this journey: ensuring access to affordable energy, and we have here my very good colleague Dan Jorgensen, the Commissioner in charge of energy, to boosting clean supply and demand, how we can create the conditions to ensure that we take the right decisions when being consumers or when taking into consideration the public procurement on the availability of resources and services that are solid. Mobilizing public and private investments, powering the circular economy, fostering international partnerships, and upskilling workers to guarantee a fair and inclusive transition for all. And the financial component of our plan stands out as a pivotal element. To make this transition a reality, we must secure the necessary investments from scaling up renewable energy infrastructures to supporting the manufacturing of clean technologies. In the short term, we have committed to develop a joint roadmap for competitiveness and decarbonisation, aiming for 100 billion euros in funding based on available funds in the Innovation Fund, additional revenues resulting from parts of the emission trading system, as well as the revision of the InvestEU facility. In the upcoming proposal to the next multi-annual financial framework before the summer, a new European competitiveness fund will respond to these needs in a much more integrated fashion. But we need to start thinking how we are going to shape this. The fund will establish an investment capacity that will support the strategic technologies and manufacturing which are critical to European competitiveness, including important projects of common European interest or infrastructure that can connect Europe. It will help to leverage and de-risk private investments. We have worked closely with the European Investment Bank in the preparatory stages of this plan. And now, we count on your commitment, your support for the implementation. And speaking out about the de-risking investments to accelerate the energy transition, I could underscore the very important role that the European Investment Bank has already, is still, and will still play in this field. The pilot program on corporate power purchase agreements for an indicative amount of 500 million euros will allow industrial customers to buy energy directly from a producer like renewable energy sources at a lower price. And the European Investment Bank is also our key partner to introduce a grid manufacturing package to give grid manufacturers the long-term certainty needed for them to ramp up production to match our needs with an indicative amount of at least 1.5 billion euros. But to enable these investments, we also need to count on the competition tools to ensure that whenever it is need to develop some ideas around the state aid as an enabler that can play a strategic role takes place in a simplified manner. This new approach will expedite support for renewable energy, industrial decarbonisation, and the manufacturing of clean tech products, ensuring the effective use of public funds while encouraging private sector involvement. This is why we will be opening for public consultation a new set of guidelines to make use of the state aid in order to provide support in a way that does not make the level playing field or the single market, but that points out the importance to support the clean industrial deal. We will launch this consultation, and we hope you engage in this work closely with member states and other stakeholders. I could say that it will be quite important to keep this taxonomy reference. I could say that knowing what we speak about, reassuring the importance to keep the purpose of this whole sustainable finance package, so to allow us to learn how to invest in a smart manner, how to avoid risks that we do not want to be facing in the time to come, will still be very important. We remain deeply committed to building a greener and fairer society, and we look forward to a constructive debate between pro-European groups to deliver while maintaining the policy objectives and main elements in these crucial regulations. Looking to the future, the work is far from being done. Looking to the past, we count on the framework conditions, on the landscape that we wanted to achieve as the reference that we should be following. In today's complex geopolitical landscape, believe me, Europe can make a difference, and there are many people outside that wait from us making the difference. Please, let's join forces and act together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move from European competitiveness to something that is incredibly important for so many people. It's something to do with social and economic values, and it is affordable housing. We know the issue very well here in Luxembourg, and it goes right across Europe. So in order to talk about this, it's a great pleasure to invite once more to the stage President of the EIB, Nadia Calviño.
Good morning, everyone. What a great pleasure to be here in the stage again and to speak just after my dear Teresa Rivera, Executive Vice President of the Commission, and together with my dear Dan Jongersen, Commissioner for Energy and Housing. It is a great pleasure, and I take this opportunity to say loud and clear that the European Investment Bank has as its top priority to consolidate its role as the climate bank. And that means that we will continue to endeavor to mobilize public and private investment in key areas for Europe's security and competitiveness going forward, starting with energy grids and energy infrastructures and interconnectors, the deployment of renewable energy, technological innovation that will maintain Europe's leadership in this area and ensure that climate and competitiveness are just two sides of a coin that will ensure that the green transition is a European success. Now, moving from these large energy infrastructures to something which is much closer to the daily lives of Europeans. A shared challenge throughout the EU, housing. Last year, I devoted my first 12 months on the job to visit the 27 member states. And one of the most surprising findings was discovering that housing is a challenge for almost all member states. Very different circumstances, very different demographics, very different growth levels, and yet access to housing, affordable housing, especially for the young, is a shared challenge and is a top political priority for leaders throughout the EU. So immediately, we engaged with the European Commission. It's so good that there's a specific commissioner for housing in the European Commission to see how we could join our forces and make sure that we would try to tackle, working together, this challenge and support national governments and national key players in this endeavor. It is estimated that the European Union needs to build 1 million more new homes every year to meet the demand. Renovating another 5 million will help us to lower energy bills for households and to lower emissions contributing to climate change. Furthermore, we need to develop a European industry that is able to build sustainable housing, energy-efficient houses, fast and cheaper. So here we are. We have three key elements: a new building industry at European level, renovation, and new houses, affordable houses, especially for the young, that require massive investment. So as the European Investment Bank, if there's one thing that we can do is mobilize public and private investment. And I am so happy to be sharing with you our first response, an action plan that will allow us to increase the scale and impact of our support to Europe's housing sector. We plan to double our financing to an annual 6 billion euros as of next year in this area. And this will mean around 10 billion euros of financing over the next 2 years that will be mobilized from the European Investment Bank. We plan to extend our whole housing value chain across the EU. In a moment, Vice President Tsakiris, who has been leading our housing task force, is going to give some more details. And we want to have this three-pronged approach, mobilizing investment for innovation, sustainability, and affordability. Working in partnership is at the core of our action plan. We have big ambitions, and we have also big partners and shareholders and stakeholders, that we will be working with, from the national promotional banks that have immediately jumped on the project and are very willing to contribute, to the private sector, the building industry throughout the EU, and of course the European Commission. I am quite confident that on the basis of the platform that we will be launching precisely in a moment today, and by bringing on board all those public and private players that want to be activating the levers to address the housing needs in Europe, we will succeed and we will be able to increase the quality of life of Europeans. Once more, let me repeat what I said in my introductory remarks. I am proud to be European. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President. And now, please give a warm welcome to Dan Jorgensen, the European Commissioner for Energy and Housing.
Thank you, Madam President, dear Nadja, Teresa. I really liked the phrase, I'm proud to be European. I would have liked that also 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but I like it especially today. We are living in turbulent times, and I don't know if you all feel like this, but I'm almost afraid to look at my phone in the morning when I wake up, what happened across the Atlantic during the night. And I think that the only answer that we know for certain is the right one from us to this situation is to work together, is to stand together, is to be united. And that goes for more or less all of the issues that we collaborate on in the European Union. So yes, of course, defense, this is what we're all focusing on. But actually, the social fabric, what keeps us together, our models, our European social models, they are an important part of our strength. So we need to build on them. Before I say something specifically on housing, which is an important element of this, allow me to just share a few remarks on the other part of my portfolio, energy. You know, in certain political offices around the planet, you have to swear on the Bible before you assume them. I'll share with you a secret here. To become a European Commissioner, you have to swear on the Draghi report. I'm kidding, but I'm also not really kidding. So the Draghi report mentions energy almost 700 times for a reason. Our competitiveness in Europe is suffering because our energy prices are too high. At the same time, we experienced last year the hottest year ever measured. Climate change is no longer only something that happens in Africa and other parts of the planet. It's here. We see the floodings. We see this devastating forest fires, droughts. And there's a war on our continent. I calculated, this is a bit of a scary number, I calculated that if we look at how much money Europe has spent buying fossil fuels in Russia since February 22, if we add that up, instead, we could have bought 2,400 completely new F-35 fighter jets. Instead, that money went to help indirectly fill up Putin's war chest. So competitiveness, decarbonisation, fighting climate change, becoming independent of Russian fossil fuel is at the core core of everything we do right now. And last week we presented a Clean Industrial Deal and an Affordable Energy Action Plan that does indeed put forward a lot of concrete proposals that will help us. So just to underline, there's no backtracking from the commitments on the green transition from the European Commission. On the contrary, we are fast-tracking. We need to deploy more renewable energy. We need to become more energy efficient. We need to have a closer energy union. So, housing. Rent has risen by about a quarter in the last 15 years in Europe, in average. House prices are up by a half. Last year, approximately 17% of our population was living in overcrowded houses, and 1 in 10 Europeans spent 40% or more of their disposable income on housing. So these are all numbers, but behind these numbers are people. Young people forced to put off starting a family. Vulnerable people threatened with homelessness. Students who cannot take up university places. Workers who cannot accept job offers. Rural communities facing depopulation. Cities unable to retain teachers, nurses, or police officers because they cannot afford to live where they work. These people and their stories provide living proof of the housing crisis and the impact it has on Europe, how it threatens social justice and social cohesion, of how it weakens our economy and reduces our competitiveness. It is for these reasons and for these people that President von der Leyen tasked me with addressing this crisis. So, where do we begin? The Commission has already established a new housing task force, which will support me in delivering the European Affordable Housing Plan in early 2026. For this year, 2025, a key focus will be on outreach, dialogue, and partnership. The Commission will be listening to and learning from all of you. Together with the European Parliament, we will soon launch the consultative process to ascertain key housing priorities at European level. A number of these priorities are already very clear. For example, we need to modernize the construction sector to support the supply of affordable and sustainable housing. That will be the goal of the European Strategy for Housing Construction. We will seek to reduce building and renovation costs, to support more skilled workers, facilitate greater access to the single market, and harness the full potential of digitalization and innovative building techniques. We will also take a hard look at the permitting rules to speed up planning and construction and to make better use of vacant buildings. We will assess factors such as short-term rentals and speculation and address their economic consequences. Putting my other hat on again, energy. We must also leverage the synergies between affordability and sustainability. Last week, for example, the Commission adopted the Affordable Energy Action Plan that I just mentioned, which will support households to improve energy efficiency, bring down bills, and avoid energy poverty. Last year, between 45 and 47 million Europeans were not able to adequately warm their homes. This is, of course, unacceptable. We will team up with other institutions, such as the EIB and the European Parliament, to build partnerships, to bring in expertise from all relevant fields, and to share best practices between member states, cities, and regions. And of course, we must provide funding and finance, our prime focus here today. The EU is already mobilizing substantial funding. For example, the Recovery and Resilience Facility supports significant investments and reforms in housing across member states. More than 22 billion euros is going into social housing and other social infrastructure, and an estimated 85 billion euros is going into energy efficiency renovations and the construction of new energy efficient buildings. There are other important funding streams, such as Invest EU, LIFE and Horizon Europe. The Social Climate Fund, of course, also. The Commission will continue to push for more funding for housing. For example, we will encourage and enable member states to double the amount currently planned under the cohesion policy funds. I will work closely together with Executive Vice President Teresa, who is also here, in the revision of the state aid rules, and wherever possible, we will help to mobilize private investment through Invest EU and the Energy Efficiency Financing Coalition. We can be much more innovative in our investments, and we need to maintain strong cooperation to ensure maximum synergy in spending. So, I very much welcome the approach from the EIB and its emerging action plan on housing. Today's launch of the investment portal is further good news and a vital first step towards the pan-European investment platform. This platform is central to our plans. It will enable us to gather together the different work streams on funding and financing for affordable and sustainable housing and make it accessible. I underline the full commitment of the Commission to work closely with the EIB and the EIF, as well as national promotional banks and international financial institutions, to make sure this platform achieves its objective. The pan-European cooperation is essential because the housing crisis presents a challenge to European values, European competitiveness, and European citizens. So it is time to take ownership of this challenge and deliver a European solution. Bringing on more investment is, of course, a key part of the solution to make housing more affordable, sustainable, and decent. So let's invest in affordable housing to drive our long-term competitiveness, to tackle homelessness and social inclusion, to help our communities become greener, healthier, and more pleasant places to live. Let's remember that these investments go beyond bricks and mortar. When we invest in housing, we invest in people. Teachers, nurses, police officers, so that they can live among the children that they nurture, the people that they care for, and the neighborhoods that they protect. We invest in friends and families and neighbors, the people who turn our villages, towns, and cities into communities, the people who turn our houses into homes. On that note, I thank the EIB once again for hosting this very important event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jorgensen. Thank you so much for those wonderful words. And now we have a very special double session continuing on this topic. So it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage David Jormisser, who's going to take you through a couple of panel discussions, no less, and he is the media officer at the EIB. David.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you very much, President and Commissioner. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to this panel discussion on affordable and sustainable housing. I'm very pleased that we have a distinguished lineup of speakers who will be taken to the floor very soon. The first panel, for around 35 minutes, will focus on steps towards the affordable and sustainable housing platform, and the second part of the panel would look at local solutions. But before we start, I'm delighted to welcome to the lectern the Vice President at the EIB Group responsible for housing, Yanis Sakiris. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, It's both a privilege and an honor to stand before you today as we mark a pivotal moment in our collective journey towards a more sustainable and equitable Europe. Today, we're not just discussing the future of affordable housing, we will try to shape it. With affordable and sustainable housing platform, the European Investment Bank is taking a bold step forward. But we are not doing this alone. The European Commission and national promotional banks are key partners in making this vision a reality. So, what do we bring to the table? As President Calvino mentioned earlier, we're diversifying and expanding our support to the entire housing value chain. Our approach is built in 4 pillars: partnerships, which means working together with the European Commission and national promotional banks to improve access to finance and advice; expanding our reach, focusing on EU countries where the housing crisis is most severe and where systems are less developed; broadening project scope from innovation in construction to real estate development and home ownership; and mobilizing the private sector, where we are expanding our client base to include private for-profit promoters to boost investments. But why does this matter? Because the need is urgent. 2.3 million new housing units are needed every single year in the European Union. But only 1.4 million building permits are issued annually. So you can imagine the incremental increase in the gap. That leaves 900,000 units every year as a gap. Meanwhile, to meet our climate targets, we must renovate 5 million homes annually. So the numbers are huge. The European Investment Bank is stepping up. Our Housing Action Plan will increase financing from 3.5 billion in 2024 to 4.3 billion in 2025 and 6 billion by 2026. Over the next 2 years alone, we will mobilize 10 billion euros in financing. Taken together with private investments, this will unlock at least 35 billion euros for new homes, renovation, and innovative housing solutions. We are not just building more homes. We are building better, energy-efficient, and resilient homes. And we are moving fast. The one-stop-shop portal that we are launching today will make it easier for housing promoters to access finance and expert advice. As Vice President of the European Investment Bank, I'm proud to lead this initiative, and I would like to express my gratitude to President Calvino for entrusting me with such a crucial responsibility. But this is a collective effort. This is about creating a lasting change. This is about building a Europe where housing is a right and not a privilege. Together, we can and we will make affordable and sustainable housing a reality for all. That is why I'm pleased to share with you our first actions towards this collective effort. Please have a look and test our new one-stop shop online investment portal for the affordable and sustainable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President. And in the spirit of cooperation and working together, I'd like to invite the first 4 panelists to the stage, please, while we're watching the video of the portal. The first 4 panelists to the stage for the housing debate. Thank you. Did you missing one? Okay, super. Thank you. Right, just checking everyone's settled in and feeling at home. Yes, brilliant. So we can start. As I mentioned, so this first panel will look at the steps towards the housing platform, the Pan-European housing platform. Now, after looking at the great video earlier on and listening to the speeches, I'd really like to hear the views from our panelists today on these first steps towards the platform. And actually, Irene, you were recently nominated as a chair at the European Parliament on housing. I mean, what are your views so far on the steps towards a pan-European housing platform?
So first of all, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to the EIB also for the effort that is putting and for this plan, which is certainly very, very welcome. In the Parliament with the Special Committee, what we are trying to do is, first of all, to have a real recognition, analysis of the needs at the European level, because right now we do have this macro data that the Commissioner mentioned, so we know that there is an emergency crisis. We know that prices are unaffordable for not just the most, the lower income, but also increasingly the medium class. So we need to provide answers. But right now we are still trying to understand what are the problems, because every country, every region, different cities have different problems, different needs. So we are trying to better understand and also have a sort of analysis of what are the sources of the possible source of funding at the European level. Again, Commissioner mentioned some of the tools that we may already have available to support investments in the various member states. So we are now looking at all these possible sources, but then we will also need to have a more harmonized plan for the future with the stronger resources at the European level that could be matched also public and private, so with private resources at all levels. So it's a big effort that we are trying to do, but I think it will be vital and important also, for example, very simply to exchange best practices, to know what is working, because we have interesting, great speakers that may also already explain interesting experiments that have been done or are being done in different places. We need to learn from each other what has worked, what is not working, what are the problems of this real estate market. And I may go on, because it's true that there is the need of millions of new houses, but it's also true that there are hundreds of thousands of, residential homes that are empty, not used, or used not for residential use, but for touristic use. So we have different markets that right now are insisting on the same infrastructure, on the same number of houses. So I think we also need to understand how this market is working and how we can improve the functioning of the market for the people, also by having a good regulation that help us not only easing the permitting part to build more, but also to make the market more functional to what its primary objective, which is providing homes for people.
Indeed, and it's important to keep that focus on the primary objective. And I liked what you said earlier on about us already having some of the tools, but it's true that maybe we don't have all of them. And I understand that your committee produced a report recently on possible solutions to the housing challenge. And I was wondering if you could share a few ideas with us all here today.
That would be the outcome of our committee. So our committee is a special committee on the Parliament, and the objective is to work to produce an initiative report. So it's a report that will summarize all the findings of our work over this year. So we hope to be able to deliver in a year, along with ideas and proposals that could feed into the European Commission plan plan for affordable housing. So we are in strict contact and cooperation with the Commissioner because we really want to be aligned. And I think this will be the key word for the work that we need to do, alignment. So making sure, for example, that the work of the EIB and the pan-European platform is also aligned with the needs and the work that individual member states are doing, that the European Commission is doing, because in this way we can really be effective in delivering with, in the most effective way, without, dispersing energies or duplicating efforts. So I think this is of vital importance.
Indeed, and not wanting to get ahead of ourselves, but very much looking forward to seeing the conclusions when the report is ready. I wanted to move across to the Commission from one side of the stage to the other. Matthew, you were recently appointed as the, if I get this right, the head of the task force looking at housing at the European Commission. I mean, from what you've heard so far and what you've seen so far, I mean, what are your views on this new pan-European housing platform?
Well, thank you very much. It's delightful to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this from the perspective of the task force. It's a huge challenge, as I think you've heard both President Calvino and Commissioner Jorgensen say in the speech, and I entirely endorse what Dr. Cinnali has just said in terms of the way the European Parliament is addressing it. She used a great word, which is alignment. I think the other word is partnership, which we are really keen to develop. With cities, I'm sitting next to the former Deputy Mayor of Budapest, and with her, and also with her new capacity as Chairman of the Committee of the Regions. Cities are a vital vector of expertise and know-how on housing. They're on the front line in many other ways, and so the more, as you've just said, Dr. Gignali, we can work together with cities, with regions, and of course with member states, because it's member states that hold the primary responsibility. And of course, regional and local actors for housing. What we need to do, if you like, at the Commission is find ways to add value. That means working in partnership. Commissioner Jorgensen recently has met with 12 major cities which are really putting their wishes on the table. We want to see this replicated across Europe in the coming year in our coordination exercise. It will be really essential that we do that. I think we've seen some great steps announced here today as we move now towards this pan-European investment platform, because it'll be getting the funding and financing streams right. That'll be a crucial part of our overall story of success. Thank you.
Super. And I had a second question for you, and I just wanted to double check there, because it's really about the EU helping cities and regions with enabling conditions, and this is what I wanted to double check, this enabling conditions. I mean, what can we do to improve these enabling conditions for the housing market, and looking at possible solutions?
I mean, behind these important but dry concepts of enabling conditions and the supply and demand crunch, as the Commissioner has just said, is people. And that's what we need to get at, to try to find the things that are preventing people having access to the affordable and sustainable and decent housing that they need. But then what we need to do then is look at those areas where we can add that value. I'm sure we're going to hear in a moment about the construction industry, but just so let's take that as an example. How can we develop a strong strategy which reduces building and renovation costs, supports the development of more skilled workers, facilitates access to the single market, boosts the productivity, using digitalization, using innovative building techniques. That fits perfectly with what the EIB is trying to achieve in its innovation work under the Developing Action Plan, and it fits very well with what we're trying to achieve. You heard the Commissioner mention that we're looking at state aid rules, we're looking at cohesion policy funds, we're going to look at housing speculation, and last but not least, we're going to look again at short-term accommodation, the short-term rental issues, which is affecting so many different cities. And of course, the cities. So again, back to partnership, affordable and social, public and private, European, national, regional and local, working together to develop, I hope, a successful menu for the European added value to this crisis.
Many thanks, Matthew. And now I move across to the presidents of the Committee of the Regions. I had two questions. One looking at, I understand that you were previously the Vice Mayor of Budapest, yes, if I'm correct. So just go back to Budapest, because I read some quite startling statistics that I think house prices rose by something like over 150%, close to 170% in recent years. I mean, what can the EU do to support cities where house prices are rising substantially?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm quite lucky because all the key words were said before. So I will have a chance to speak more freely. So what is the Committee of the Regions? We are a lot of locally elected leaders from all across Europe, from all dimensions. So we have the small towns, we have the islands, we have the mountain areas, we have the capitals, we have all the different experiences, because you all talked about the diversity of the problem. And we all have this problem. Okay. So what is my approach? We've set the target together. This is why we're here. We said in Europe, security is very important, but security has many dimensions, and housing is a social security issue. We want affordable housing for all. Okay, we've set the target, we know where we want to go, we see it on the horizon. But the path, that is not one path, because every single municipality, every single community has different pressures. Many similarities, many patterns are very, very similar, but it will be many, many different paths that these communities will build. A lot of local leaders will build. We are all very motivated in building this road. What do we need? We have the understanding, we have the set of goals. We need a lot of flexibility, a lot of adaptability. We need tools, but these tools should be flexible. Okay. How I visualize what we have to do together with the platform, with the task force. It is like rowing in a boat. You know, the dragon boat. You have rower pairs and a lot of rowers. The key is synchrony, okay? We are not rowing in a lake. Nothing is stable. We are rowing in a very tricky river. Sometimes a lot of water, sometimes not many water. A lot of stones all around. If we don't watch each other, if we don't listen, if we don't feel one another, what's happening on the European level, national level, local level, what's happening with the business, what is happening in the institutions. So what we will have to do in this boat, that we have to be very sensitive to the signals, because everything is changing around us. We see thermodynamics in action, like pulling all complex systems from order to disorder. This is what's happening. A lot of things shaking the system. We need stability. We will take this role as cities and regions to be a sort of stabilizers in Europe. This is why we talk a lot about cohesion policy, because yes, we understand the need of stabilizing the borders, but we have to be very strong stabilizers from the inside too. So this is how I envision it.
Okay, thank you very much. And this idea of stabilization, of course, without the stabilization, it'll be very difficult to build something cohesive. And coming back to the Committee of the Regions and a contribution to the platform itself, I mean, are there any concrete actions or any concrete measures or anything you're looking at in particular to contribute to the platform as well?
Oh, absolutely. We are highly motivated as an institution and everybody who is here, because they are local leaders, mayors, presidents of regions. We have with us the mayor of Barcelona, who is working on a written contribution, because we know administration is a written thing. So we are preparing all our experiences, recommendations, the tools we have, what we can provide the table and what we need. But really what we offer a lot of different realities, from the small towns to the big capitals, from the islands to the mountains. But also we need this interactive, this synchrony, this very sensitive signaling mechanism, because the things will be very different in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. We have to understand there are a lot of bottlenecks. You know, we cities always have plans, and then life comes and change everything. We have member states in the Eurozone, out of Eurozone, interest rates problems, a lot of bottlenecks in supply chain disruption, all the tariffs bringing a lot of new bottlenecks. So we have to always adapt and readapt, be flexible with the definitions, be flexible in how we work in understanding to have synchrony. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. So we've talked about regulation, we've talked about policy, we've talked about stability. I'd like to hear some views from the industry's point of view, and I'm very pleased that we have the president of, let me get this right, the European Construction Industry Federation, FIEC. The challenges are different, and the problems are different, and the solutions are different. But one thing, I think it was the president who mentioned this earlier on, that we know for sure, is that affordability is a constant challenge. What can the industry do, or from your point of view, what could the industry do to really make houses more affordable? I mean, is there anything that we can do as an industry to address the affordability issue?
Yes, I will try to answer. And first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting us in this important moment. And we think that when we speak about construction cost, we need to understand that it's only part of the whole. So we think that we need to have a global approach on these issues, because we have also to consider all the other factors that has a big impact on the general cost. We have to think about the availability of the land, the construction cost of the materials, the waste, the shortage of skilled workers. So we need to consider in a more holistic way. For sure, innovation and digitalization has a crucial role for the future in order to also to increase the productivity of our sector. But this, from our point of view, start from the BIM, the building model, the building information model, because we need to have a digital plan of buildings. This is the starting point, and we need to do it to introduce in all the construction processes. I would like to give some examples of what we can do. We have experience with, for example, innovation and digitalization. We have experience of some of the most advanced companies in Europe that they have implemented digital technologies and procedures in their projects. And according to some data that we collect, we see that they can reduce the errors in the construction site by 20%. That means to reduce the delays, and for sure we have a reduction of cost. But also those kind of things require time. It's not so easy to implement them. We need to upskill and reskill a lot of workers, and we need to have a lot of investment. And this is, again, a big, big concern from our perspective. I'm representing 3 million of companies. Our sector has a lot, 95% of the companies has less than 10 employees. So we need to keep in mind the big fragmentation that we have in our sector. For sure, it's something that we need to change, but it's not so easy. And I think that part of it is natural, is inside the characteristic of our business model. Scalability is not so easy because, as was said also before, previously, we have a local market with local challenges, local habits. It's not so easy to export one solution in different other ways. Another concrete example of what we can do regarding industrialization is the off-site technologies. We have this experience also in France, in Italy, there are some examples, in Germany and in Nordic countries. And according to what we can understand, if we will be able to scale up from tens to 1,000, let's say, projects, it's possible to save costs, to reduce costs for 30%. But again, I repeat, also the site of technologies is one solution, is not the only one solution. We need to be very flexible to understand that we need to have a bouquet, let's say, of different solutions for the different needs of the different parts. Finally, I would like also to underline the problem of the administrative and regulatory burdens. We need really was said also before, to accelerate all the procedures. It makes really not sense that to have to obtain a construction permit sometimes takes more than 5-10 years. And this is something that is not only in one country. I have experience of Italy, but it's not only in my country that we have to face such big problems. And we need really to simplify the procedures. There are a lot of environmental rules that are not so easy to comply. And so this is my message, let's say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you've already touched a little bit on innovation, which was going to be my second question, actually. I think in terms of affordability, it's true that innovation helps to reduce costs as well. How could the industry become more innovative? I mean, are there any tools, are there any measures that one could apply to not just focus on the affordability issue, but also on innovation as well?
I think that we need, for sure, a greater support. We need the EU smart funds. We need to involve a lot of private, flexible investments. Innovation and digitalization needs investment, I think, and we welcome the new platform that we heard before to support affordable housing. And we also think that it will be important that they will consider some key points of the former Juncker plan. For example, then, as was said before, the one-stop shop, the idea to put together private and public investments, and also the advisory function to the beneficiaries, because this is again related with the consistency of our companies that are, again, I repeat, small, very small companies a lot of time. And we also hope that behind this platform, they will get some inspiration from what the recovery and resilience facilities has done in the past, because from our perspective, the idea to provide investment based on targeted reform was a very good thing. It worked very well. I have experience in Italy where the municipalities and the local authorities in general were able to more than double the investment in 3 years. So it's something that with the right instrument is possible to do. This is the good news. The problem is that we need a lot of investment are required. Previously was said that we are speaking about 1 million new houses a year. Maybe it's not the right number, as Irene said before, but in any case, it's a huge amount of houses. And we are happy to hear that the intention to double the financing for the next year from 7 to 15 billion euro. But if you consider that amount, just to give you an idea, we can just fit the gap for the needs of Luxembourg in terms of housing. So it's clear that we need to involve in a different way the private capital. And in this, it's very important to consider a level playing field between the public funds to have for the social housing and the private one, because it's not the case everywhere. And again, here, there are a lot of differences around Europe, because there are countries in which the housing is a closed system, only reserved to the private. In other countries, it's not the case. So again, it's very difficult to have a common starting point. And I think that what was mentioned before, that is very important to use this year to better understand the local and the differences, because otherwise we will face a lot of very difficult issues, in my opinion.
Okay, super. I was going to mention that I'll open the floor for questions, but after the second panel, and during the second panel, we'll be talking about more local solutions. So before we leave, because I see we still have a few more minutes, I was going to ask the same question to one of the panelists, and you can all respond in a random order. But we've talked about here and now, and actually looking at the time, I think 6 minutes ago we officially announced the platform as a step towards the portal as a step towards the platform. What I'd like to hear from you, not about the here and now, but looking forward, what would be signs of success? We launch today, we move towards a platform. What would be success for you in the future for this platform? Want to go first? Okay.
I can start.
Thank you.
A success will be a tool that also works for Budapest, also works for Barcelona, also works for the Canary Islands, also works for villages in the hills, for small towns. This is a success. We have very ambitious goals. We have a lot of needs, not enough money, never enough money. But if our tool is flexible enough, if the definition of social housing is adaptable enough, if the partners are there, if there's synchrony, then we will see success in many places, because this housing crisis is not solved by a few places. This can only be solved, built, the pressure lowered, if it happens in many different places, in many different volumes.
Okay, I will make a note of that, and actually I'll let you decide who answers next. But while I'm taking notes, I'd like to hear more responses on success in the future.
Well, thank you. I think the Commission should go last, generally speaking, but to pick it up. I'm going to be measured in what I say here, because I think we've heard profoundly, passionately why housing is so important for European citizenry. But we need to recall the primary responsibility is for member states and regions and cities. So how can we best support those efforts? So my answer is to really have taken, in the course of this mandate, under the leadership of Commissioner Jorgensen, measurable steps towards helping address both the supply and the demand side and produce more affordable, sustainable and decent housing in every part of the European Union where this is necessary. And that's not to say that the European Commission is coming as like a messiah to fix all the problems. We are here as the messiah's assistant to try to fix these things on the ground in a measurable way. Thank you.
Can I? Okay, of course I agree with everything that has been said before, but if I may add something, for me success would be to see that we are achieving some concrete results for the people. And I just want to give you a few examples. Just a few months ago, I met a young, talented boy that was admitted in a very prestigious university in one of our top cities. I'm not going to mention either the university or the city, but he said that he will pick, he cannot go, that he will renounce that because his family cannot afford to pay for a room in that city, and of course to pay for the books, for the school and everything, and things like that. And he was not the first one. I heard a young woman, talented woman, that couldn't accept an internship because it was paid too low compared to how much she would have to pay for the rent in that other big city. I've heard younger families that were pushed out from the cities where they were born and raised because they couldn't afford to live there, okay? So I hope that all one of us keep in mind that our primary objectives is to make our cities livable again for the European citizens, because otherwise we will have failed our mission.
From my perspective, it could be very important if the platform is, through the platform is possible to do realistic processes to go in that direction. Because I think that we need not to add bureaucracy, we need to have instruments, and I think also it's important if through the platform it will be possible to collect the different experience that we have, because sometimes we have nothing to invent, but we have just to use things that are in place. And I think that going around Europe is possible to find very good best practice, and the platform has also to be let's say, a library of best practice in which the single companies, the municipalities can go and understand if something is possible to do. I think that those could be a good role for the platform.
Many thanks. Thank you very much. I've been noting this, and I'll do a quick summary at the end of the event. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing examples from Barcelona, from Zagreb, and from other cities as well. I very much enjoyed this panel discussion. I hope you did too. Thank you very much to esteemed speakers, and please join me in applauding for all. Thank you. I'd now like to ask the other panelists to join for the housing panel on looking at local solutions, please. Thank you. Please join me on the stage. I would say Okay, welcome, panelists. After that very, I would say, not only interesting, but also thought-provoking discussion earlier on the platform. Now we'll look at solutions, and these solutions will be very, very local solutions. So I'll have a quick look at my notes for these. I was going to start with Croatia, because I understand that Croatia is working on the country's first ever strategy for affordable housing. How are these efforts helping to increase investments for housing on the ground in Croatia?
Good day, David, to you and to the dear panelists. I thank EIB for the invitation to be a part of this very successful and useful forum. I'm glad to be here as the representative of the government of the Republic of Croatia, but also of the Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds. Well, yes, you stated well, Croatia has just adopted the first ever national plan on housing policy. Midterm Strategic Act, which is the first known on housing policy, with the purpose to provide Croatian citizens affordable housing, but also to fulfill certain determined quality standards. The ultimate goal of this document is to, of course, decrease the depopulation of the citizens, allow younger families to have affordable housing, also allow elderly people to have a life of high quality, and also to mobilize workforce. A very successful analysis of the demographic, social and economic data was done, and the point of the national plan is to provide each and every citizen of Croatia safe, long-term rent or affordable housing. But to come to the conclusions, we had to go a bit more into the reasons why there are so many problems with affordable housing or finding a home for Croatian citizens, especially the young ones. And the reasons were found in a couple of things. First of all, statistics say that Croatian people leave their parental homes at an average age of 31.8, me included, and the EU is about 26.3. Secondly, Croatia is also highly positioned in terms of overcrowding rate. Overcrowding rate is of the households is 31.3%, which is rather high, looking at the EU level, which is 16.8%. And then the third reason is very well known, probably to the colleague panelists from Barcelona, is tourism. Tourism is the massive engine that moves Croatia. It's an economic booster, but also causes problems with the rate of the real estate prices,
the rate of rentals, especially in touristical sites. And the fact that in touristical sites, especially the ones which are cultural heritage, like the ones that I'm coming from, the city of Dubrovnik, there are no places to buy anymore, and there are no places to rent anymore, because everything is touristically based. So the government, we should not only rely on the measures that government is planning in the national plan to maintain and to manage the buildings, to have buildings energetically efficient, to have green infrastructure, to help disabled people in their buildings, but we also have to work with the local community. So they work on limiting further increase of short-term rental of residential units. We believe that is also crucial. The national plan on affordable housing of Croatia has an action plan. And just to acquaint you with a couple of things that action plan says, a couple of measures which are inside. First one, which is very popular, we will Croatian citizens up to 45 years buying a new property will not pay real estate tax, and they will pay only 50% of the VAT, which is a very popular measure. Secondly, we are planning to activate all the vacant properties. The statistics say today there are more than 600,000 vacant properties in Croatia, and the need is about 200,000. Third, we are strongly planning to work with the local communities, trying to propose building of residential units which are going to half be affordable housing and half rent. Also, the plan is to work with private investors, offering them easier procedures. In return, in their building of residential units, we are planning, they are supposed to plan a percentage for affordable housing. Also, a big point is going to be put on student dorms. Making more student dorms with more capacities, so students are supposed to live in student dorms, not in residential units. It's the same thing with elderly people. We are trying to work on making homes for elderly people of more quality, so they can also leave their residential units and live a life of quality in their homes. Those are some of the highlights of the action plan, and it sums up to numbers at the end. For all the activities which are planned up to 2030, Croatia will need about 2 billion euro. And we are planning to fund it from the national budget, EU funds, loans, but also, as we are looking on affordable rent, we are counting in the rent that's going to be the rent that's going to be paid for the affordable housing.
These are very ambitious plans, and I really, I'm very excited about the outlook for Croatian affordable homes. I mean, as I was busy scribbling down some statistics, I thought that maybe the statistics would be similar for other cities. And actually, I'd like to move over to Barcelona now, to the mayor of Barcelona. Barcelona has some ambitious plans to reclaim the city, to make it more affordable for residents. Would you be able to tell us a little more about your plans for Barcelona, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to the European Investment Bank, and especially for the President, Ms. Calviño. And we welcome the announcement who has made the President to increase available funds to the cities and to the states to 10 billion, because housing is obviously a social emergency, because our cities cannot afford homes in their own neighborhoods. That's it. The facts are clear. Housing prices have increased by 50% across Europe in the last 10 years. So we have to change the current rules with urgency. Because I think we have two models in Europe. The first model depends on the free market alone. It assumes more building will lower prices automatically. This has failed. The market does not provide affordable housing where needed. On the other hand, the second model recognizes housing as a right that requires protection. It understands we need courage to intervene the housing market. So Barcelona has chosen the second path. We act through two big objectives. First, we are accelerating the construction of social housing. We plan to grow our public housing stock up to 24,000 dwellings in new urban areas in my city. And second, and this is very specific of Barcelona, we are implementing better regulations. We have imposed a rent cap thanks to a national legal framework, because Spain is an example of this new approach to housing on regulation. The Spanish government passed a pioneering housing law. This law created the concept of rent-controlled areas, where housing supply and demand are imbalanced. And Barcelona government declared our city to be eligible for this protection. In fact, it was the first decision I took as a mayor. So we are standing to see the results in rental prices, but by the moment, a 3.2% decrease in the third quarter of 2024 compared to the same period in 2023. On the other hand, we need a smart market intervention. Regulation in housing markets must be done with intelligence. Our goal is to add simplification and avoid bureaucracy. Reduce red tape, simplify procedures, create clear rules for all players. Markets need rules to function correctly. Smart regulation creates stability and certainty. Obviously, we need public and private partnership. We need private investment too. So we must stimulate private funding for affordable housing, create profitable models that serve social needs, and go hand in hand with the private sector. And finally, you mentioned tourists and the problem, the massification of the tourists in our cities. So we have taken an important decision in Barcelona. By 2028, tourist apartment license will be eliminated in my city. This means that potentially 10,000 properties will return to the city's residents. For example, Airbnb. We work together in this plan with regional and national and European level we work. But cities need more resources and to be more decisive. Housing is an European democratic challenge now, especially in this context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I noted a few things there, especially this idea of a social emergency in it, and it really is. But I'm sort of reassured and very pleased to hear that both from Zagreb and also from Barcelona that you both have very ambitious plans and clear targets. So I think there are certainly signs of hope. I had another question about another announcement that I'm not sure has been made or is due to be made, but it's around a Mayor's Alliance for Affordable Housing. And I understand that you're also working on this as well. Is that correct?
David, yes, thank you for the invitation. I represent CDP, the Italian National Promotional Bank, but also today we're here as European Long-Term Investors Association. Many other banks are here with us today. So I'm privileged to share a bit the Italian case with a look on the European perspective. So in Italy, CDP has been working on social and affordable housing, not so recently actually, since 2010. CDP is very old, founded in 1850, even before the country was united. We have been historically supporting social infrastructure by collecting actually retail savings through the postal system,
so passbooks and bonds, retail bonds, by citizens and residents of Italy, and invest in them in social infrastructure, originally exclusively through lending to local authorities, and this business model has grown over and over during the years, and therefore, what do we do under social and to support social and affordable housing? We have established an intermediated equity model, quite unique, very successful. I have been privileged to witness it growing over the years. In response, in fact, to the legal framework that the Italian government passed in 2008 on edilizia residenziale sociale, so social and affordable housing. Our model is a fund of funds model, and we have a dedicated asset management company, CDP Real Assets, that I like to describe as a PPP itself, because the shareholders of CDP Real Assets are CDP, the parent company, of course, but also the private investors that co-invest with us in this model. And in particular, the other shareholders of CDP Real Assets are the ABI, the Association of the Italian Banks, and ACRI, the Association of the Casse di Risparmio Italiane, that are also shareholders of GDP. And why is it a beautiful model? Because it pursues a national interest, addressing social affordable housing problem at national level with local solutions. So I come back to a concept that has been described a lot before. And we do that because the private co-investors co-invest at the fund level, but more importantly, at the local level, where the local interest that they pursue is present. So to give you an example, Fondazione San Paolo is co-investing with us in Piedmont. Cariplo is co-investing with us in Lombardy, and so on and so forth. This model is self-sustaining today. So only in the third new fund recently launched, we have started blending in EU funds. The trade-off is that the banking foundation accept, let's say, lower returns than other investors would do. So blending EU funds in our model could help, on one hand, increase affordability, especially in the south of Italy, where the construction costs are high, and the affordability is less than what we have in the north, and also de-risking our fund of funds, thus increasing attractiveness for the so much needed private capital. Ideally, in a way that the EU funds subordinate to the private sector, that can then receive that comfort needed and the level playing field that I think Piero was mentioning before. So over the years, our strategic approach to housing has evolved on what we call the 4S model. So from social housing for families to student housing, more recently senior housing, and the novelty of the new strategic plan is what we call service housing for young employees, nurses, people that move to Milan, for example, and cannot afford to pay the rent at market prices. And the common denominator of this 4S model is that we combine what we call the hardware components, so typically revamping of existing buildings or building new dwellings, with a software component, so community services, with community managers that ensure we create inclusive communities and not ghettos. As of today, CDP has committed over 1.5 billion euros, leveraging 3 billion from other private and institutional investors. And CDP Real Assets, a dedicated asset management company, today manages these 3 fund of funds, out of which FIA, the first one founded in 2010, has invested in nearly 36 local regional funds that have financed 255 projects, created more than 12,000 dwellings across Italy. I cannot project the map, but it's fascinating if you see it, how we cover from north to south all our regions. In the most recent fund of funds, the Fondo Nazionale per l'Abitare, we have invested with the support of the InvestEU guarantee under the social investment and skills window, and established a partnership with the EIB Group, with the EIF in particular, that for the first time is investing 300 million in our funds and in this asset class in Italy. To give you a sense of the social impact, 95% of the beneficiaries belong to eligible families that cannot afford paying full rent. 94% of our total portfolio consists of affordable social dwellings. 48% over the total are regenerated buildings, so nearly half of the portfolio is not building new dwellings, but refurbishing existing ones. 75% of our investments are directed towards energy efficient assets, and 100% of our investments pursue a carbon-free approach. So in 15 years, FIA has supported the construction and refurbishment of dwellings affordable all over Italy. I will mention 3 examples that also help me explain how we combine, let's say, support in terms of advisory and also co-investing with the EIB Group, because one first project is in Milan, in the former Expo area, where we have developed a neighborhood, Cascina Merlata, during the time Expo was organized. So it helped also supporting people that were working on site. And the Cascina Merlata, that is part of a wider urban regeneration project, more recently, in the same area, in cooperation with the EIB, we are co-investing, co-financing the construction of the new campus of the University of Milan. So this is to say that we look at housing, but we look at urban regeneration in a broader perspective. And here comes in also the support of InvestEU Advisory Hub and the joining forces with the other European partners and the private sector to transform areas of the cities that when I was a little girl were really horrible. In Turin, we are revitalizing the former Olympic village that remained abandoned for many, many years, converting 7 buildings into nearly 400 temporary residency for students. And one last example is in senior housing. We call it the Blue Space project for senior housing, where we combine dwellings with telemedicine services with Policlinico Gemelli in Rome.
Super. In fact, you answered both of the questions that I was about to ask you. So thank you very much for that very efficient response. And I've been busy scribbling away and really looking at revamping new dwellings and regeneration, which I think is very important. The other thing that I didn't mention because I didn't answer my second question is that partnership with national promotional banks like GDP is incredibly important. It's crucial for the success of this pan-European housing platform. So we're very, very pleased that you're here today and that you've already mentioned the benefits of working very, very closely together. Another crucial partner, in fact, for this platform is Housing Europe, and I'm very pleased that Bent is here today. Bent, in terms of scalable solutions that we can look at on a local level, I mean, are there examples from Housing Europe, from your members, that you would like to share with the audience today?
Yes, thank you, David, and thank you for the invitation today. What we heard early on was that what we need is a new production, more than 1 million more than we are doing today in Europe. And also, Martina, what you mentioned was refurbishment and renovation. So what we need is scalable solutions. And what we have done early on has often been also in respect with the EIB has been projects in different European countries. And what we have to look at now is to look at the existing intermediaries in the European countries and to use them to channel capital and funding at the local level to have this scale, because we have to go from individual projects seen from European capital, Luxembourg or Brussels or whatever it is, to use the existing local intermediaries in the countries. It could be Caisse de Dépôt in France, for instance. It could, in my own country, Denmark, could be the Landsbyggefonden, which is a national-wide fund you can use there, and other examples in the other European countries. And in some countries, we do not have these intermediaries. And then the EIB, I should in your case, Martina, could be guarantees from the EIB to make the scale at the local level in Italy, for instance. So this scalability is so important and bring different parts together. What we have done in Housing Europe, we have a responsible housing finance working group. And what we have done there is to bring partners together, local housing associations, local institutions, banks together, also bringing EIB to the table. And in fact, say, okay, when you bring all these partners together concretely to look at what is going on in different countries and make concrete solutions. Sostre Civic in Spain, for instance, it has been a result where we have scaled up there in the Spanish case, and in fact have made hundreds and hundreds of new homes, which was not possible if we had not have brought the partners together there. So scalability, using the local intermediaries, and using also the means of guarantees to scale up at the local level. So it would be the first advice from Housing Europe.
Thank you, Bent. And a follow-up question actually on this, because I understand that this is something of special concern, in particular to the members of the association. In terms of inequalities in the housing market and social inclusion, are there success stories or examples or something on a wish list that you would like to mention today? From
I think we yes, David. I think we all have a very, very big wish list here, and heard it earlier on also from different people. Housing for young people. In the earlier panel, we heard this very sad example that. You have been granted a student, you could access the university, but you are not able to have a home in one of the biggest cities in Europe. So when we are looking at housing inequality, it was also mentioned by the Commissioner, it is about people, it is about the social fabric in the society. And what we are looking at now is a very wide scale from middle-income families, key workers in the bigger cities, and to the most vulnerable people and homeless people. So it's a very, very wide range that the housing crisis affects right now in Europe. That's why we have to act very, very fast, and we have to look into systemic solutions. Why we are sitting here and why we are discussing this today is because we haven't made long-lasting systemic solution in many of the European countries. And right now, I think we are facing a situation where we're looking to, okay, scale, it has to be fast. Many people, they are in need right now, so we have to move really fast. But when we move fast, sometimes we break things, but we do not have to make this same solutions as we did before, because some of the solutions, when you look at the different European countries, in fact, in the 50s, we had good solutions and we broke them down in some countries. So we have now to make sustainable, long-lasting solution. And it's green sustainability, and first of all, it's also social sustainability we have to look into. So it is solutions for tomorrow and for the next 30 and 50 years we have to create right now. And we have to look into some of the good examples, because we have many examples I think when we count in Housing Europe, we have 23 different finance and housing systems among our members. Our members have 25 million affordable and social dwellings in Europe. We have 23 different systems, and when we look closely into the systems, I think we have about 10 or less systems which are, in fact, sustainable in the long run. So when EIB make the funding, we also have to make conditionalities to improve and to push to increase the amount of the system which are functioning in Europe, and the good examples. There you can make in EIB, you can make some conditionalities. And one of the conditionalities which I think is very important is to have these revolving funds, to reuse the funds again and again. in my little country, Denmark, in fact, we have a sustainable system. We have housing for students, and they can afford to live in our homes. And the key thing here is non-profits. It's not big subsidies from the state at all. It is non-profit system and revolving funds. So you create funds from the beginning and reuse them again and again and again and again. And I think it's one of the lessons to be learned, at least from the Danish system, and there is also other revolving systems in Europe, and try to say, okay, these are some of the best systems. How can we scale them and use them as examples in other countries?
Thank you very much. And it was very, very good to hear these examples from Zagreb, from Barcelona, from Italy, from Denmark, from across Europe. I mean, now I'm just having a look at the time. I think we have the opportunity. I'm looking to see if we can take a few questions. If we can take some questions from the floor. There's a roving mic. One of our colleagues will be coming to you. If you could please raise your hand to say where you're from, who you work for. If possible, if you could also pick somebody to one of the panelists to answer the question, that would be very helpful. We have the fourth panelist here, and the other four panelists from the first panel are also still here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? My name is Bajba Miltovic, and thank you, European Investment Bank, for inviting also another EU institution, European Economic and Social Committee. We are working with many stakeholders, with European Parliament. We heard very good interventions with Commission, Matthew Baldwin, we heard previously on. And also there are many interlinkages, as Commissioner Jorgensen mentioned, with energy, transport, and also infrastructure, because housing is really horizontal topic. From European Economic and Social Committee perspective, we are working currently on the opinion that is linked with cost of living crisis, because we need to also mention that there are still people living in energy poverty. I heard data that some people cannot afford, they are paying from their household income 40% and sometimes even more. So it's really increasing statistics in Europe. Another opinion that I would like to mention, and we are working on, it's a request from the Danish presidency, the upcoming presidency in the Council, European Affordable Housing Plan, the contribution of civil society. So again, we will bring all the stakeholders, also many of you, to our house in Brussels to bring up also these topics in the Danish presidency and upcoming term. I would like to also say that ESC is keen to contributing to development and the future implementation of European Affordable Housing Plan and also European Strategy for Housing and Construction. And I think some of the speakers mentioned many statistical data, but I think we also need to turn attention, and I think Zrinka, you was mentioning that, quality of housing. This is something that we need to turn attention, because there are almost 20% of European citizens that are living in overcrowded apartments or houses, and they cannot afford really their room or the space. So I would like to thank very much speakers for your contributions, and I'm sure we will meet in Brussels for the next upcoming events that we are planning. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, and looking forward to the event in Brussels. I think, yes, thank you. We have another question.
Hello, my name is Gergely Karácsony. I'm the mayor of Budapest. I'm honored to join you this very important discussion. European institutions, national governments, local authorities, and the housing market players really need to work together to solve the housing crisis. The housing crisis is one of the biggest challenges facing Europe, but we need targeted and effective measures to handle it. But let's never forget, we are living a period of polycrisis. The housing crisis is closely linked to the climate crisis and the problems of social cohesion. This is particularly true in Budapest. According to some calculations, Budapest has the worst ratio between the salaries and rents of any major European city. high property prices are driving people out of the city, and the daily commute makes up half of the car traffic in Budapest. This undermines our fighting against the climate crisis. The high interest also contributes dramatically to the reproduction of social inequalities. So we need to act now, but the financial problems limit our opportunities. But I have a good news, because Budapest soon will be most likely own the most valuable brownfield site in the city. This is nearly 1 square kilometers of land has the potential to become a green, affordable and green new neighborhood. I'm grateful for opportunity to discuss with this project with the EIB leaders. With regard to this particular project, I would like to draw attention to 3 aspects that may also be important from a pan-European perspective. Firstly, we should pay attention to the use of urban brownfield sites, especially if they are publicly owned. One of the reasons of the housing crisis is that the urban population is growing, but there is not enough space to build new homes in the cities. Demand is therefore increasing faster than supply, pushing up prices. By freeing up brownfield sites, we can increase supply and reduce the prices. And in addition, brownfield sites are usually not very far from the urban core, so they are often an excellent opportunity for sustainable urban development. Secondly, we need to recognize that the housing crisis is too big to solve by public investment alone. Part of the EU funds should be used to create new development areas in the cities, for example, by creating the necessary infrastructure. In this way, we can encourage real estate developments that fit in with the objectives of the cities. Finally, the Pan-European Investment Platform would be very helpful in expanding affordable housing. Loans at below market rates would greatly help the cities to build partnership with the market actors to provide affordable housing for the citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And unfortunately, go ahead. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I think we probably have time for one last question. One thing I would like to say, most of the panelists who are here are staying for lunch, staying for the afternoon, so you'd have an opportunity to speak to them. I'll also be here for the rest of the day as well, and more than happy to take any questions you would have. But I think we have one more question towards the back, please.
Yes,
please
thank you, David. My name is Luka Korleit. I'm the Deputy Mayor of the city of Zagreb, Croatia. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on organizing the conference and on launching the platform today. And then I'd like to congratulate the keynote speakers and the panelists of both panels. I think we got some very valuable insights on this topic. I must say that we, as a city of Zagreb, have a very fruitful collaboration with EIB during our mandate. We have signed, at the beginning of last year, we have signed a framework loan for various projects from green transition, digital transition, infrastructure, etc. And at the end of last year, we have signed the technical assistant agreement for housing, especially for housing. And of course, we have some agreement related to public transport, etc., etc. So, but coming back to housing, I think that we have a lot to learn and a lot to gain from EIB. This new agreement would help us, this new collaboration would help us to expand both in terms of quantity and in terms of quality and in terms of affordability. Right now, in the city of Zagreb, we have only 2.5% of housing stock that is affordable because these apartment units are owned by the city and they are affordable. But we want to expand our housing stock And this is why we collaborate with EIB, and first and foremost through the technical assistance, through which we are going to learn about best practices in the region and try to apply them to our case, to the case of Zagreb. So thank you for the conference and thank you for the support, and I hope that we will continue to collaborate in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. But before I hand over to Lisa, I just wanted to say thank you very much. A huge thanks to the President, the Vice President, the Commissioner, to the panelists we have on the stage, the panelists in the front row as well, for the questions, contributions. Please do try the portal. I understand that it goes live next month. We've had a lot of interesting discussions, a lot of helpful input as we work towards a pan-European platform. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your contribution. I'd like to suggest a round of applause to our panelists before I hand over to Lisa. Thank you. Thank you.
And a round of applause to David. Thank you. Well, I'm not going to keep you much longer than 30 seconds to say thank you for sitting. I know we all need to move. We need to get some daylight and some food, but we'll be back in here to start again at 1:43. Thank you.
La situation parisienne dans la recherche d'un logement, elle est plutôt compliquée. J'ai parfois attendu pendant 1 an pour trouver mes premiers logements. Bonjour, je suis Béram, j'ai 29 ans et bienvenue chez moi. J'ai aussi passé par des agences, par beaucoup de plateformes spécialisées. On est tombé sur une ribambelle d'arnaques. Donner ses papiers, c'est justificatif d'identité quand même à quelqu'un qu'on ne connaît pas et sans savoir ce qu'il peut en faire derrière, c'était aussi un élément assez inquiétant et j'en ai parlé à un ami qui lui était déjà chez Inly. C'est pour ça que du coup j'ai essayé pour la première fois. La démarche a été assez simple. J'ai mis tous les documents qui m'ont été demandés, mes justificatifs de paie. Au bout de même pas 1 mois, 2 mois, on avait déjà un retour pour une visite du logement, justement celui-là, et avec l'option de récupérer les clés directement. Ce qui était super. Là, actuellement, notre appartement, il fait 55 mètres carrés. On a le balcon, 2 chambres, la salle de bain, les toilettes et la cuisine qui est ouverte sur le salon. On a aussi un parking, aussi les espaces communs avec un jardin d'intérieur, le local vélo et l'ascenseur, vu qu'on est au 4e quand même. On est à 1 207 €, parce qu'on avait vu des appartements un peu plus petits sur Paris, où on était plus sur du 1 600, 1 700 €. Je suis ingénieur en efficacité énergétique. Comme on consomme moins d'énergie, on émet moins de CO2, ce qui est plutôt bien pour l'environnement. On gagne pouvoir d'achat. Ça nous permet aussi d'être plus à l'aise niveau courses, éventuellement de se dire qu'on peut prévoir des vacances un peu plus souvent, ce qui est déjà très bien.